Of the City of Monona Plan Commission, Monday, November 22nd. Would you like to call the roll?
Chair Moore.
Here.
Alder Goforth.
Present.
Ms. Fox.
Here.
Mr. Holmquist.
Here.
Mr. Homburg.
Here.
Mr. Stein.
Here.
Mr. DePula.
Here.
Ms. Fallett is excused.
Great, thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from November 8th, 2021?
Motion to approve. I'll second.
Okay, any great changes, corrections? Yeah, Chris.
On page 5, condition number 8, Doug, should be, instead of a photometric plan, a full lighting plan shall be submitted to the Plan Commission for review and approval. The difference being, we talked about, we haven't seen fixtures or pole types or anything yet. Photometrics would just be that.
Got that. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other changes, corrections? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes carry. Next up, number 4, appearances. There's a few people appearing tonight.
Do you want to do it here? These are all for the Monona Drive project.
Sure.
Okay.
Great. So if you are here to present in this section, and even though these are on the Monona Drive project, I'm going to go ahead and do them now. And if you're here and haven't filled out a form, please do so. Otherwise, I'll just go through these in order that I just received them. And first up, I have Jeffrey Ballerman.
Hello.
Halloran, thank you.
Jeffrey Halloran.
Yes, Jeffrey, if you could go up to the podium, to the microphone up here. That'd be great, and announce your name and your address, please, and then go ahead and say, and each person we'd like to limit to 3 to 5 minutes max.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
Hello, I am Jeffrey Halloran. I run Flying Low Skate Shop at 4601 Monona Drive, Suite 102, as part of the Monona Antique Mall space. And I'm down there at 5400 Healy Lane, former Monona Grove High School graduate. Hello, former Monona Public Library employee. It's great to be back. Thanks so much. Thank you for your time. I want to just express that the building and the space there, since I've been there in a short time, it's been a great chance for me to experience the significance of the meaning to the community that this small space, and I feel like it brings a lot of value to the area over there. And it really, as somebody who grew up and came out of Monona and left to go live in the San Diego area, and now come back, and now I'm making my go as a skateboard shop person, and I've been in the industry for over 30 years. My goal is basically to be there and to show the kids that, listen, you've got your park down here. It's important for us to have something to put our hearts into, and that's what I'm doing with where I'm at. And I love getting to be there with everybody over there at the mall, and I just wanted to come and speak my piece and say that it's important for the children and the kids in the community to have spaces like this that are existing on Monona Drive there, and I feel like we would be at risk of losing what makes Monona special by just turning it into something else. I don't want Monona to be, and I'm keeping this positive, but we don't want it to get just gentrified and everything that makes Monona special to kind of just be swept away. So it's another kind of a space for maybe people needing to come in, and yes, it's important to have places to live, and apartment complexes are important, and I understand that planning goes into this type of a thing, but it's important to voice that this is filling a need, no matter for how small or big at this point. But my goal is to make a go at staying in Monona and to take what they have over here with skateboarding being on the rise, with the Olympics, and now more than ever, kids need something to do and to look forward to every day, and to know that there's somebody like me who's out there, thinking for them that, like, listen, if you don't have something to get up in the morning and to go do and to be looking forward to that day, whether it's going to learn a new trick or watching the next video, or turning into the next Jeffrey. So somebody who's going to be like thinking proactively for the next generation to come, which is what I'm all about over there. You know, nobody's getting rich in a skateboard shop, period. You know, hard goods, whatever. That's skateboard decks and stuff. And that's what we specify in. I've got, you know, ties to the skate world. Tony Hawk follows the shop on Instagram, you know, Instagram. I'm a staff photographer for Low Carb magazine in San Francisco. And my goals are to just keep going and going and going. It doesn't mean that we want to necessarily make Monona, like, you know, blow it out in any way, but it's very vital that this space stays here so that people that do go there have a little something to look forward to. And we don't want to lose that, and I don't want to be long-winded, but I feel like, is there anything that I could speak to that my spiel kind of raises questions for anybody here or anybody out there in Zoom? Hello! I'm kind of lurching forward because I'm tall. Anybody or?
No, thank you. I should probably explain that when we do appearances, it's just a one way, which is to say you get to say your piece, and we sit and listen very intently to you. So I thank you for letting us listen, but we can certainly respond when we get to the pre-hearing indirectly to some of the things that you, or directly to some of the things that you raised. But appearances are a one-way thing.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, I just would close then speaking to that and say that, again, I feel that this space is very vital. The community and what makes Monona special lives and breathes over there in that little neck of the woods. I left coming from having gone through what felt like for me as a retail employee on State Street as some very hard push in the past couple of years. And I needed to go somewhere where I'm putting family and people first. And that's what I do my best. You know, I'm wearing a mask all day long so that when people come up and see that they can count on Jeffrey keeping, you know, things, wherever anybody's at with their mind about masks or not, but that's me, and that's why I'm there. And I just want to say that, like, you know, Flying Low Skate Shop is vital, Monona Antique Mall is vital, the whole spread over there is vital. The door, you know, I want to say, like, come and check it out. You'll know that when you walk in there that the vibes are right, and it's a people kind of a vibe. And I want to keep, like, fostering that in Monona so that the next kids that come up out of school who maybe don't fit in with, like, oh, they maybe, you know, they don't play sports or something, but they want to have something that, like, they know somebody's there that cares about them. That's why we're there, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, Linda Noorsman, did you want to speak?
Sure. I'll tell you a little bit hard after Jeffrey.
Well, I didn't mean to rattle on too hard.
You were really good. So I'm Linda. I own the Monona Antique Mall, and I have seen growth in that area of people coming into my store that didn't even know it existed, and still keep brand new people coming in. I went from 800 square feet 6.5 years ago to I now have 4,400 square feet in there.
Use the mic, maybe?
You can't hear?
So they can hear on Zoom.
Okay.
Yep, if you bend it down, perfect.
Okay. I now have 4,400 square feet in there. Started out at between 800 and 900 square feet. It is a vital place for people in Monona, and it brings, you guys probably don't realize how many people I bring from Cottage Grove, Stoughton, all over, a lot further, that come into Monona because of that store. And I also see the traffic on Monona Drive, and I cannot imagine what the traffic will be on Monona Drive if they build this big 3-story apartment with 90-some apartments in. People now on Monona Drive, they want to, somebody slows down to go into Rockies, you got all kinds of cars out there honking at them because they're slowing down just to pull in. So Springhaven and Monona Drive, that's going to be just terrific, or horrific as far as the traffic goes there. For if you guys are going to put, if they want to put that big of units in there, It's just not gonna be good at all. And we've got those apartment complexes going up all over the place. Soon, it won't matter what little town you go into, it's all gonna look exactly the same. Now Monona sets apart because we have some unique places, and mine being one of them. I don't know, I just hope you guys reconsider it and think about the traffic, the kids on that back street on Gordon. Right now, if I leave my store and I go down by Gordon, or I take a walk down there, there's kids out there playing on the side of the street with their bikes, and it's like a real family orientated on that street. And if they have all those apartments going in there, those people living on Gordon Avenue are going to lose that hometown Monona feeling. There's just no doubt about it. It's going to be crowded and packed with people and cars. That's going to be the big thing. And the idea that they say they're going to provide some electric cars down there so people don't have to have cars. What's a few of those cars compared to 90 units in there, and each unit having 2 vehicles, most likely. So I don't know. I think it's a big mistake. That's all I got to say. I could say a lot more on my behalf, but that's not what you guys are looking for. Although I do have 30-some vendors in that store. So it's not just me. And now I rented a spot to Jeffrey as his own business. I have nothing to do with it. It's just his business because nobody else, he wasn't going to find someplace else. I have vendors in there, young vendors in there that have tried going other places and they don't want them, and I take them. And I can't tell you how many compliments we get on that store that people just love, keep coming back there. So that's all I got to say.
Thank you, Linda. Next up, we have Chris Dahl.
Well, folks, my name is Christopher Dahl. I've lived in that 4601 Monona Drive for 38 years, my entire life. My grandmother rented that place in 1976-ish. It's where I grew up. I've run through that building since it was ABC shirt lettering back in the day. I'm sure everybody remembers that. I would be displaced if the housing there was gone. There's 2 other women that live in the back of the building that I'm sure were not notified. I wasn't notified of this meeting. I was told by somebody else by word of mouth. They would also be displaced as far as living conditions go. The rent there is very, very affordable. To be completely honest, and I don't think this has been iterated enough, that intersection, the way it is a complete and total disaster. It is bad. You have the new traffic from the Quick Trip that was just installed, so that will also now be competing with the traffic on that corner on right close to that street. The way it is now and the way Springhaven is engineered, when you're coming down Monona Drive toward the Beltline from up by the high school, to turn into Rocky Rococo's and to turn into Springhaven at the same, it makes cars line up so that there's no way that they can't not bottleneck. It's impossible. And the thing is that Monona Drive was just redone to create an inflow for more traffic. I feel like the street would basically have to be redone again to be widened for even more traffic for a passing lane or a turning lane or whatever the solution is there. You have the more traffic from the laundromat now that that man has established his business there, which seems to be doing very, very well. Another thing, as he had mentioned before, is we have a lot of things in Monona that set us apart, that as a different sort of city. And I feel like every time one of these businesses gets older and older, and then the business person is retiring, these things just get bought out, flattened, and turned into some sort of just pod-style housing. I don't think that that's what this city is. You know, I can see what's happening here. Next is going to be Schwenn's, and then it's going to be J&H. All these things that keep the traffic in Monona. These people bring the business to Monona. The people shop in Monona because they're in Monona while they're getting car parts, while they're buying antiques at the shop, while their parents are bringing the kids in for the skateboards, whatever it is. But these things just keep getting removed. And if we just turn this place into, you know, metropolis, whatever it is, what's the difference between us and everybody? What's going to draw the traffic in here to keep the revenue going? It's these little things that keep the bigger things rolling. There's a Quick Trip on every corner. There's all these things are on every corner. This housing that we're building is on every corner. But things that really bring things to Monona are the things that aren't everywhere else. And it was also stressed that, yes, that all of the homes back on Gordon will suffer with all of the traffic coming through there. It looks like the way the parking is, you're going to have to pull around the building to the back and onto Gordon and then turn into the parking lot. So all of that traffic will hit Gordon. What are you going to do with, like we said, 90 units? Is that what it is? You're going to have 90 plus cars added to Gordon's traffic. That street is not made for that either. There's already no sidewalks. What are we going to do about that? So I hope we really consider here what the expense is for, you know, a 90 unit complex. That it doesn't make any sense to me. Thank you folks for listening.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Chris. Okay, now I have Eric McKay. Eric, welcome.
Thank you.
If you could state your address too as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you for the time. Eric McKay, I live at 4603 Gordon Ave, so right across the street from where this is being proposed and from the antique mall currently. I'd like to share three things about this proposed development. One, sort of about the impact of the existing residential community. Two, about the appropriateness of even offering tax increment financing. And third, what I think the city of Monona could actually use. First, the impact on the existing residential community. As someone who lives directly across the street from the proposed development, I'm very concerned about the entrance exit that's planned for Gordon Ave. And for those that are unfamiliar with the area, it's just been stated, there's no sidewalks on Gordon Ave. Which means that whenever the children of our neighborhood, and I have three, aged 5, 3, and 10 months old, are out on their bikes, scooters, or just playing around, it takes place on the street. The neighborhood in Gordon Ave is diverse, active, and quite literally crawling with children. We've got a couple swings in our front tree, and on more than one occasion, I've counted a dozen children from the neighborhood playing it out. It's right across the street. You see the kids, they're all over. You know, most of them not invited, but all of them welcome to be in the yard. And I already have concerns with the lack of speed bumps on the street on the other side of the entrance to the bar entrance there, and with the traffic from the high school that extends right in front of our houses. To say that a 97-unit apartment complex would just increase traffic is sort of overly simplistic, and it would quite literally transform the way that our street and our neighborhood is used. By placing that entrance exit there, the commission should know that it's knowingly increasing the chances of one of our children scootering down the street, not being seen, and being struck by an apartment resident. And if this is approved, the straight fact is that it will become inherently less safe for my children to play outside. My second concern is about the appropriateness of the TIF, which was alluded to as something that would likely be requested as part of this. And according to the website, the responsible use of TIFs is to facilitate the redevelopment of vacant or underutilized commercial sites and to fund public improvements in the TIF districts. And we can call this a mixed-use space or mixed-use development, but I think it'd be naive to consider this as anything other than a private rental property. Case in point, the Planning Commission's report acknowledges that we would need to rezone what is currently a commercial site if this were to be approved. I'd just like to point out that the only true commercial aspect to the proposal is the continued existence of BMO Harris, which is already on the property. And yes, there's a proposal for a coffee shop or restaurant included, but anyone who lives in the neighborhood can attest that there's no shortage of quality coffee shops and restaurants within a half-mile walking distance either direction. Rosie's, Monona Bakery, go down the line. There's no case to be made that adding a small coffee shop or restaurant or retaining BMO Harris in this apartment complex will somehow revitalize our neighborhood. It doesn't need to be revitalized. I'd say, in fact, what this proposal will do is displace several small businesses like Family Owned Bar and the Antique Mall. The typical rental property of this size requires one property manager. On average, this thing will have 1.4 employees to manage the entire endeavor. So there'll actually be more jobs displaced as part of this project than there will be created. And so I think, just put plainly, this falls short of any standard that you would have in place for why we would offer a subsidy for doing something like this in our community. And I'd also argue there's virtually no public improvements as it relates to increasing availability of public spaces or improving existing public spaces. The plan describes a muse area, which will, I guess, be some sort of public gathering, column that I don't doubt the residents would use. But for those of us already paying taxes and living there, it would frankly be a dramatic reduction in the actual usable public space in that area. The grassy areas along Monona Drive, between Monona Drive and the BMO Harris parking lot, and the grassy knoll between Sportsman's and the antique shop, are favorite play spaces for all the kids in the neighborhood. They use that all the time. That would just be gone. So that's the side of TIFs. I don't think it's a public investment that's worthy of our subsidizing private money coming in to create something like that, because I don't think it improves the current, I don't think it meets the standard. That's my argument there. This is why I wrote stuff down, because I didn't get excited. My last point is about what I believe would be better for the city of Monona than the proposal in front of you today. I recognize that my earlier comments about increased traffic could, making my, kids less safe for my kids could easily be dismissed as, well, of course, anyone getting an apartment across the street of their house is going to say that, right? I bet you wouldn't have any complaints if this were happening across the street, and admittedly, I probably wouldn't be here saying something if that were the case. But setting safety aside, my kids aside, and my own context aside, if the city of Monona wants to use an existing commercial site to increase available housing for the sole benefit of a private investment company group, we should not be doing so through the development of large market-priced apartment complexes. I mean, the research shows that there's a link between homeownership itself and positive economic and social outcomes relative to those with renting. And the mission statement of the city of Monona, part of it on the website, says, "Together we strive to remove barriers to living, working, and thriving in our city because we believe that diverse perspectives make Monona a great place to visit and call home." According to the 2019 Dane County Housing Needs Assessment, which is prepared by the Dane County Housing Initiative, there is already, and there has been, we all should know this, a significant gap in rates of home ownership between people of color and white folks in Dane County, a gap that's at least 20% difference across all income levels, accounting for that. And part of this gap is due to the lack of available housing for purchase. We lag behind the national average. Monona lags behind the national average in terms of percentage of owner-occupied units. We're between 56 and 60%. The national average is closer to 67%. We're better than Madison, but there's a lot of things we I think, selectively compare ourselves to Madison to make ourselves look good and then don't on the other side. So maybe that's not the benchmark. So I think that if we're going to be a community that looks to lift historically marginalized communities out of poverty, if we believe what we say we believe, we need to concern ourselves with the goal of building generational wealth for underrepresented individuals and families through home ownership, not through allowing large private investment companies to come in and take over existing commercial sites and displace folks who are living and working there already. So as you consider a development proposal like this, I would urge you to think of how the impacts of this decision are going to ripple well beyond this current generation of Monona residents. And if this building is allowed to go up, we're effectively conceding that this will, as long as any of us reside in Monona, never be a space that's available to consider new business development proposals, things to revitalize and build into the communities, the people that are living and working and have businesses there already, right? That is the opportunity cost. And the opportunity cost of accepting and saying yes to this specific proposal is high. It's really high opportunity cost. This is a bet. So regardless of what you think about the benefits of what could come from, more residents, more tax revenue for the business, whatever, there's a high opportunity cost. And I just want that to be really taken into consideration. And from where I stand, the upside of something like this is not nearly substantial enough to forfeit either the present space and its current uses, nor the future potential of that site. Because it's just going to be an apartment complex. That's in the end, if you do decide, I hope that you do not, if you do decide to approve the project, I'd ask you to consider adding some common sense stipulations to the approval, such as 1, moving the entrance exit off of Gordon Avenue. 2, if that can't happen, require speed bumps be added on either side of that entrance exit. 3, curb off the intersection where Springhaven meets Gordon so that we don't have traffic going to the Springhaven entrance and the Gordon entrance on Gordon Ave, because that's where traffic's going to flow. Reduce the number of rental units to accommodate more publicly available green space. And don't offer TIF incentives. That's not what this is for. These people ask. They're looking for this. TIF is supposed to be something that we say we care about. We want you to come here. Help us build a better community. That's not what that's for. If that's something that's contingent upon this, let's wait for a better offer. Wait for a better plan. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. And I understand we also have Jessica Landman on Zoom. Jessica?
Hello. Can you hear me?
I can. We can. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. My name is Jessica Landman. I have been a resident of Wallace Avenue, 4600 Wallace Avenue, for 16 years. I'm coming to express my concerns about this property being built for a number of reasons. The first, as many have stated, is the traffic. I'm on Wallace Avenue, which is right behind Gordon, and there's been a lot of discussion about Gordon tonight, and I echo everyone's sentiments about that street. Really great community. The neighbors get along. When you think about what Monona stands for, you think of Gordon Avenue. Like, the children are playing together, they're running across the lawns together, they're riding their bikes, they're playing kickball. These are things that I have serious concerns are a safety detriment to that street's children. But even more broadly, when you put in a piece of property that's that large, it expands well beyond the street and the entrance and traffic flow. We already have a problem with the high school students parking in our streets and driving up and down the roads rapidly. As a result, in the last number of years, we've had to address one-sided parking during school. I know my son is 14, and when he was a young kid, we would have a lot of traffic because of the high school, and it was concerning. He couldn't ride his bike very easily during certain times of the day. People are really active in our community. There are a lot of people walking their dogs, taking walks in the afternoon and the evenings when people are coming home from work. And I just wonder what that looks like when you add that many people. We talk about the number of units that they have and the number of spaces that they have for parking, But think about it, these people are gonna have friends and family visiting them, they're gonna have some retail space, where are these people going to park? And as you start expanding that, paired with some of the other traffic flow issues that we already have, you're gonna be going multiple rows or multiple streets down and wide to accommodate this kind of capacity for living. And that impacts many more people in this community than just the residents on Gordon Avenue. So I personally have had some real struggles with the traffic that we already have because of the high school, and this just expounds that really exponentially. I echo the sentiment that we don't have sidewalks, so where are our kids supposed to ride their bikes? I personally am an avid biker and I run. And when I'm on these streets, it's a safety concern, and adding that many people for the cost of adding more residents to a location just doesn't seem to be a good fit. If we want to put that type of building into our community in order to increase revenue stream, that's not the appropriate location for it. When we look towards what was done down on Broadway, where the new ice rink is, that makes sense. That was a dead space. There's not a lot of foot traffic. There's not a lot of neighborhoods that have tightly closed small family communities that are impacted by this. You've already got a large amount of traffic and large streets that have capabilities to handle this type of traffic. This location is not one of those situations. And if we're doing this strictly for revenue, I think we should look for other opportunities and locations in our community to have this space provided. Secondly, I came here, I've been a Madisonian my whole life, and Monona was one of the places when I started to look for my first home as a really exciting place to live because it was very focused on community and family. And that is why my husband and I bought our house in this community. And our son has really enjoyed growing up here. And part of that is the culture. You know, we put up these types of buildings, and you know, you're going to have people who are less interested in hanging out in the backyard and just chatting with each other and talking about things. The sense of community in these few blocks is real, and I think that changes the dynamic of what we were thinking this community was when we purchased our homes. And I've been here a long time. I plan to be here a long time. I don't like the cultural shift that a building like this brings to our community. So I would really like to reconsider if you're going to take a space like this, that it not be placed at that location. So that's my 2 cents, and I appreciate you taking time to listen to me tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who, I've got a few contact forms from people that wrote in earlier, but is there anybody else on Zoom tonight that wishes to speak on behalf, or on any topic, but certainly on this topic as well?
I'm sorry, my late arrival. I just found out about this meeting.
Yeah, if we could get a form for you eventually, that would be terrific, so that we can have it on the record, but you're welcome to go up to the podium as well, as long as that form gets eventually filled out so we have record. That would be terrific. If you could state your name and address, that would be terrific.
Yeah, so my name's Kelly Hanlon. I'm actually here as a representative of a business that faces Gordon Avenue, backing up to the antique shop. And it's a newer business. I've also been a bartender in the city of Monona for over a decade, and I've served this community for a very long time. I know that the small town sense of community is what the people in Monona love. Getting to ride the Lake Loop and stop at the antique shop, look around, stop at the bait shop and get ice cream, etc. All of those small town things are a great sense of community here in Monona. I also know that the business that I'm here to represent, Custom City Creations, is a newer business in the area. It was able to be started by young people who don't have the opportunity a lot of times to get a business off the ground. They were able to find an affordable place to rent. Their future endeavors and goals are to help support this community. And they've already, been welcomed by the neighbors and the other businesses in the area and the residents. To speak to his point, I've been helping renovate that space over the last several months, and I see lots of kids playing in that area, having a good time playing outside, not being on screens and video games, etc. So again, I'm sorry for my late arrival and not quite being so prepared, but I'd like to advocate for those small businesses. We're seeing a lot of that go away, not only in the Monona community, but the Madison community in general. And it's really hard to watch those things leave because they do bring up, the culture of the community, family traditions, things that you can't pass down with apartment complexes and big box stores. So please consider also the ability for, like I said, people like my friend who are young and have the ability to start their own business and give back to communities like Monona.
Great, thank you. Is there anybody else on Zoom that would like to speak this evening on this, again, on any topic this evening? We're in the appearance section. Okay, seeing none. Before we move on, I'd just like to say that as long as we're here, that we did receive several contact forms related specifically to this to the project. This project at the corner of Dean and Monona Drive. Tim Collins expressing concern that they weren't given notice at the initial meeting, lack of green space and proximity of the children in the area. Cecil Schroeder at 4404, sorry, that's Tim Collins of 4611 Gordon Avenue. Cecil Schroeder, 4404 Gordon Avenue, is concerned regarding the impact to the neighborhood character, young families and children, parking, and Marita Klinzing at 4512 Gordon Avenue is concerned about the number of families and the additional traffic and the impact on the neighborhood. Sorry.
Yeah, we heard from Eric. The last one was.
Okay, got it. And Eric, we've already heard from. So,
and they're included.
Yes, and they're included in the packet this evening that you received. Before we move out of appearances and on to the rest of the agenda tonight, let me just say, as it relates to this development, that this is a pre-hearing conference, which is to say, several people said, I hope this commission will reverse their decision or will change their mind, and our minds have not been formed. I mean, this is a pre-hearing conference. This is not. This is not a public hearing on a finalized proposal. So just know that those of you that are under the impression that we've already made some decisions as it relates to this particular development, know that we haven't. We're not at that stage at this point. Again, it's a pre-hearing tonight, and they have been here one other time, again, for pre-hearing. So I appreciate you coming tonight, and with that, I will close the appearance section and move on to number 5, unfinished business. First, the public hearing on the request by Warren City Schools for approval of modifications to the approved zoning permit at 1707 West Broadway, case number 2-0102021. One City Schools.
Hey, good evening.
Good evening, welcome back.
Hey, it's nice to be back. Well,
how's it going over there?
Going well. Well, we're really just so happy to be in Monona. So it's nice to see you all again. Good to be back here before the commission. So last time we were, it was in August, we were there in person actually, and we were given conditional approval for our zoning application. And we're here today to talk about those conditions and update you on our progress. So to do that, we'll be turning the call of JLA Architects, and I'll be here to answer any questions. Also with us are Alex Cowan from Ayers. They're helping us design some of our traffic stations, and then Megan Barrett with Gerber is helping us design our playground space, and she's on the line as well when we get to that point.
Oh, excellent. I did not see that. Hi, Meg. All right, it's good to be back again. So hello, everyone. I'm joining from Zoom this time. I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully I do this correctly. I'm not as familiar with Zoom as I am with Teams. Is everybody able to see the title page of the set?
No.
Because I hit
There it goes.
Share button.
There we go.
Okay, there we go. See, I told you. It's a technology thing, and I've been struggling with technology today, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed that everything stays up. But, so we have returned. We were last year in July, and I believe Douglas's staff report kind of gave a nice history summary of what entailed. We did several pre-hearings, which were incredibly helpful. Before we did our last one, and got the approvals with our 13 conditions. So our submittal today is really addressing the majority of the conditions, which are 6 through 8 and 10 through 14. Conditions 1, 3, 4, and 5 are standard procedure for design and construction and are being coordinated with the appropriate approving jurisdictions and have been or are being addressed within the project construction line. So condition 2 is regarding the approval of the comprehensive signage plan. In the new business section, we will be presenting to you a new comprehensive signage plan as part of a pre-hearing. We found such value in the pre-hearing process for our zoning approval that we decided that it would be good to do that for the signage package. And then condition 15 is regarding temporary wayfinding signage, which has been taken care of. And condition 9 and part of condition 8 are in regards to the potential change of use or the change of or the replacement of the existing parking structure. At this time, that future concept of the athletic center is in the future. And so it will be addressed as a separate, completely separate project, from the get-go. So there are no current plans to change the use of the parking structure to anything but parking. And so the remaining conditions 6 through 8 and 10 through 14 will be addressed because they're all kind of interconnected. So we have 3 main concerns that were brought up that we heard through the condition, and that is the vehicular traffic flow on the site, the development of the permanent outdoor play area for the school, and the impact to erosion control and stormwater management. All very important pieces of this overall puzzle. So traffic flow, as proposed, a traffic impact study completed earlier this year by AIRS, a solution of an enlarged traffic flow was proposed, and this is the overall site plan. And what we're showing here are the updated boundaries between WPS and Orange City School. That is part of the division of this lot from the WPS campus. This I can zoom in a little bit here so you can see. The first component, there's 3 components to this traffic plan. The first component is an enlarged area for cars, trucks, and buses, or when they're needed for field trips, not for every day, to easily change direction while in the drop-off queue. So as you can see now, this is the front entrance of the building. Drop-off occurs in here. And right now, with only K-4 schools, they're managing to be able to turn in here. But once they start adding to their enrollment, which is planned for next fall, they will definitely need to extend that queue line, and this traffic wall that's proposed will help do that. So the south entrance to the existing parking structure will need to be modified slightly, just realigned a little bit, since the first half of the drive is going to be part of this. This is proposed to be asphalt, and the striping in the middle is painted on the asphalt so that it allows, as you can see in the next couple slides, this will allow emergency vehicles to access. And AIRS did work with WPS a little bit and confirm with them some of their desires, because this is a joint requirement between One City School and not only a requirement but a desire from both parties to restrict access from one side to the other. But the city was concerned about emergency vehicle access. And so we're proposing that down on the south side of this property, which used to be called the Ring Road, that we extend the land or the island here in the curb so that it's only available for a vehicle to pass, on one side, but it's still big enough for a parking truck and a plow truck. I mean, not a parking truck, a fire truck and a plow truck. With the pavement, the existing pavement being hatched on both sides of that island, as well as the center of the turnaround bolt here. We're also proposing some hatching here so that this driveway does not get blocked while the cars are in queue. And then there's also an additional one at the north end of this ring road, the former ring road, to encourage Oakland City school visitors and staff and student drivers to not be able to access this, and to also discourage WPS occupants from accessing this area to try to exit out the back way. So there's proposals we need to modify some of the existing signs because right now they're all stop signs and say traffic, watch for traffic from right, but the idea is not to have any traffic from the right at this point. So, and we also have, reinforcement of the existing pedestrian crossings and no left turn during pickup and drop off during those hours. We don't want people, if they're going to access the parking structure, we're going to encourage during drop off and pickup times, we're going to encourage them to use the step-up entrance to the parking structure. And this can be shown a little bit better and a little larger. It's all the same notes, but here it is without the aerial underneath it, and this is with the aerial. So we managed to stay far away from the existing oak tree cluster. That was a concern during our temporary playground application. We tried to kind of minimize and streamline. There are existing bike lanes on this stretch, and we would like to extend those around this turnaround so that we can encourage bicycle traffic, and I will get to that in a minute. So that is the traffic turnaround for the queuing. The second component was to create a one-way traffic plan at the drop-off location. So this is done by, this is two-way here. So the cars would come in, and then they would be directed to begin to split up into 2 lanes coming through this portion of the parking lot. And then once they got here, the outboard lanes would be dropped off. And the center lane would be to merge back into traffic to exit. This is pretty much the plan that One City School is currently using right now with the utilization of cones and staff to reinforce it. And by adding new pavement parking and some additional signage to reinforce that, we feel that that would be a very good solution because they've been test fitting it over the last several months. And it's working very efficiently. The big thing was training the parents on the new process more than anything else. So once they figured it out, they're like, okay. So it seems to be working much smoother. And then as more cars are added to this process next year, there'll be more room for them to come in and just easily make that right-hand turn into the parking lot. The third component of the traffic flow is bicycle parking and access. Oh, let me go back. This is the emergency vehicle access diagram that was provided. This is a fire truck from Monona. And so they have worked through it if that can make the turn. Buses are about the same size, so if there were field trips here, the buses could come and line up out here so that the students could come out and get on. The buses could probably make the turn on the surface parking lot, but it would be difficult. So we're probably going to let One City School work with the buses on the times that they have those field trips. But as you can see, the fire truck can access going in both directions quite easily through the opening here. So back to the third component of the traffic flow is bicycle parking and access on the site. Currently, this photo shows that there are 2 existing bike racks along the picnic table in the covered portion of the parking structure. And this is at the ground level, so this is that first driveway that we were just seeing right here, sorry. And Right now, there are two. If we rotated the bike racks and placed them between the two columns, we could actually double the number of bikes that can park there. Currently, I believe there's one staff member who is riding their bike to school. And
Two.
so there's two. Okay, we're up to two. That's awesome. So as the demand increases a bit, as you can see, there is plenty of room here to add additional racks in this hatched area of the parking structure. We are encouraging riders, though, if they come during drop-off and pick-off, that they use the south entrance to the parking ramp, which is a level below the one that I am showing. And they have a little uphill biking to do, but not horrible. They would be coming around, it's pretty easy. So, and then as we were discussing and walking through this, we determined that maybe that wasn't the best location for younger students to park their bikes, because then they have to cross here during drop-off and pickup where there are vehicles going, which they should be moving slowly, but we are always concerned about the safety of the students, especially younger ones. So as we started to kind of look at the site, we determined that these areas here that I'm showing in red would be excellent locations to provide some bicycle parking because it is on the side of the road that has the sidewalk. So if students are riding from off-site, they are coming on the bike lane, they could get off and they could use the crosswalk. They become a pedestrian and they could walk their bike across and here. This provides visibility from the classrooms out to this area. It also provides visibility from the staff that will be out there during drop-off and pickup to kind of keep an eye on the younger kids and make sure that they're able to get in and without having to cross traffic a second time. So that is the proposal. This proposal can be implemented now just on the grass. And then as enrollment and the budget, because I know Run City School is currently in a capital campaign process right now and raising funds, that this could be a phased approach as well. With either a crushed gravel pad or a concrete pad. We kind of prefer the crushed gravel because it's impervious for rainwater and stuff. And considering that we do have some nice landscaping in this area, we'd like to have on the team. So that brings me to our next piece, the outdoor play area. The outdoor play area was originally proposed to be almost immediately north of the building, with the access intended to be out the main entry and around to the north side of the parking lot and the north of the building. We began to develop and investigate exactly how that would occur. We began to realize that this is an incredibly steep slope right along the edge of this, as well as all around the parking lot, from this point all the way around. And it would make ADA access incredibly difficult and very expensive to do. It also required us to remove a lot more trees than we were really willing to do. So once One City School brought on Megan, who's with the playground design group, they started looking at and investigating better ideas and locations for the proposed playground. And this area here was determined that it would be a really good location because it provides more sunlight. It already has an accessible route from inside the building to this existing patio. We would just extend a sidewalk to the playground area, and it would require the removal of fewer trees, far fewer trees than what would occur here. So that helps reduce cost, which can be then, rather than spending all the money on site development and preparation, the money can be spent on apparatus and fencing and equipment for the kids to play with. So on the next page, two proposals were provided. And as you can see here, One City has not chosen which one yet. We wanted to kind of present them to the Plan Commission to get your feedback. But this one is called the Qantas apparatus, and it is on a poured rubber foundation with fall protection built into it. And then this is an artificial turf area here, the green area, and it's got a concrete curb all the way around the perimeter that helps retain all of this. And then one city would then be installing a fence around the entire area, including a 10 by 10 foot shed that would be utilized to store Anji play equipment and any other loose equipment in the area. A gate would be here at the end of the sidewalk, and another gate is proposed for the rear portion of the playground, so that in the future, the school would like to develop a walking path through the woods that has some learning stations along it. But at this point, there's some cleanup that needs to happen in those woods before it can be safe for the kids. And we will make sure that we remove anything like poison ivy or poison oak or anything else that might be there. So this was proposal 1. It is, you can see it is 1,700, so it's just below 1,800 square feet total. The fall height is 7 feet, and for the apparatus, and 4 feet for the turf area, and this is just a more scaled version of this. The second option that was presented is called the crab shack, because it kind of looks like a giant crab shack. And it accommodates a lot more children for free play. So the yellow area, again, it would be the poured rubber, and the green area would be the artificial turf. So this is a larger area, and about 2,300 square feet. The fall height for this piece is 10 feet. The fall height for the artificial turf is for 4 feet. Again, we would propose a sidewalk to extend from the existing patio to the playground area. We've located both playground options outside the easements, the utility easements that already exist on this area here. The survey is showing that this is all wooded, but in reality it is not. So we can kind of show a little better idea on that. But this one definitely is a much larger area. So we would still propose to have gates at the front and the back. And we would propose to have a 6-foot fence. We'd like to do a chain link fence that is that has the coating on it. This fence exists right now around the patio, the existing patio of the building, which also faces Angle Street. So they would both kind of match. I believe this one's only 4 feet though. But the one at the playground we want to be a little taller to contain any equipment that the kids might be playing with, like balls or other things, to make sure that it stays in the playground and the kids can't get out and chase them if they do get out. So, so that is kind of our proposal. We would like to be able to work with the commission to get overall approval of the concept and location. We have, I do have an example of the shed that was proposed, but there are considerations for changing the color or the material slightly so that we can work with a coordinated theme that matches the apparatus that's selected to be installed. But the first phasing, because of budget issues, we would like to propose to put in the fence on the shed and then come back to install, pull a permit, then to another permit to pull to install the whichever arrangement that they decide to go with. The city decide, or one city school decides to go with. So that is, and then stormwater is the third piece that we were talking about. And although this is the end of my diagrams, I will go back kind of to the first couple of pages. We do have a shared stormwater management plan with WPS. And I believe when we were discussing this last week after we saw the staff report, AIRS was aware of the new changes at Dane County for stormwater management. And we of course would work to to adhere to those as much as possible. It seems that there's a very significant threshold difference between before it was 20,000 square feet and now it's 3,000. The only concern we would have would be that there not be any, the potential of any retention or detention requirements that might be required that we right now simply do not have the room for. So those are some of the concerns we have with the new requirements. So that, I believe, covers our submittal. And David or Megan or Alex, do you have anything to add?
No, thank you, Tammy. Happy to answer any questions or engage in any conversation around it, though.
Yeah, thanks, Tammy. Same here.
Okay.
Okay, so is there anybody else here that, this is a public hearing, is there anyone else here that wanted to speak on this particular request by One City Schools? Okay, hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. And we'll move to 5B, consideration of action on the request by One City Schools for approval of modifications to the approved zoning permit at 1707 West Broadway, case number 2-010-2021. Doug?
Thank you. I really don't have too much to add. A good overview was given by the applicant there. Just as a reminder, this is modifications to the zoning permit that was approved on July 12th. A couple items to call out specifically for potential discussion. There was a pedestrian path recommended as part of the traffic impact analysis around the surface lot in front of the building. That is not currently proposed, but maybe something worth discussing. With the playground, I think at this point it's really looking for commission feedback on both location and design between those, materials of the fencing and of the shed. As mentioned, the plans were reviewed by the city's consulting engineer. That was included in the packet as attachment 1. And with that, staff recommendation is approval with the conditions as listed in the staff report. Thanks.
Thank you, Joe. With that, I'll open it up to the committee. Chris?
Couple questions first. Is Darren on the Zoom meeting?
He's not.
He is not. Okay. My question was in regards to stormwater. I wasn't aware that the new county requirement took the land disturbance from 20,000 down to 3,000. That's news to me because I don't think they're disturbing more than 20,000. So I just would like somebody to verify that. And then secondly, that was just signed by the county exec, so it became effective whenever it was last week. Well, I don't know when he signed it. I know a couple weeks ago the county board passed it. So my question is, when there's an application in queue, are they not grandfathered in? Because they've already made an application, they're in process under the old ordinance. I'm not sure you can change ordinance in the middle of an application and still make it pertain to that applicant. So that would be a question, but my experience is if they're already been going through the process, we don't change the goal line on them halfway through the process.
I would have to check. Certainly, it's on city staff's radar about the new county ordinance, right. But as it relates to this application, I would just need to check.
Yeah. So I guess those would be my comments on that. I have a question for comment for the applicants first. I don't think it's Plan Commission's purview to tell you what type of play equipment you put in there for your kids. I think that's totally up to you. Unless there was some overriding thing that was a safety hazard that we saw. But I just don't see us choosing play equipment for you. I think that's totally your call. Certainly looking at where you want to put it and if you have room for it and all those things, certainly that's something we would look at. And I think your location is actually better than what you've shown before. In that location, it looks like there's some just beautiful mature evergreens that you're going to have to take down there right by that patio where the picnic tables are. Are you planning on any replacements there?
I don't know if exactly in that spot there would be replacements, but we are, yes, any trees that we take down would be interested in replacing them.
Yeah, the reason I made that comment is this could use a little landscaping probably between your play area and the road, not to tell you where to put it, but you are taking down some awful mature and nice evergreens. It's not that you don't have a lot of trees back there, but it's the presentation from the street and everything. So I would suggest, a condition of just some landscaping to go back in, nothing extravagant. Probably bigger one you won't like is I do like your layout for the queuing. You have great queuing. You probably have better queuing than any high school in the city right now with what you propose, but it's a great solution with that traffic circle down there. The one thing that I think is falling short is the fact that you want to put blacktop all the way through it. I think it needs to have a curb around the center with some landscaping in it, like every other traffic circle that's built around here. And it gives some order to it. It gives a little better feel. We don't need that much asphalt around there, that much additional asphalt either. So I'll like to hear what the rest of the commission thinks, but for me, I think we need a curb around the centers and some landscaping, and I would suggest that somewhere inside the radius of where the fire trucks or buses need, you can have a mountable curb with an apron, but you have enough room there. You don't need to do that because you can still have a pretty substantial center area. And it's nice, I can tell you, somewhat that has a lot of large equipment. It's nice not to have to jump up on that apron every time you go around the traffic circle. It's a little problematic. Is this play area, question, is this now something you're going to do right away and then not do that other one that was proposed out in front of the parking structure?
The one out front of the building on the south side of the property was a temporary space while we prepare this space. So this space that we're looking at now in the northeast corner of the building would be something that we would phase in. So we would prepare the area and also get our free play equipment ready to use by our students. And then, as we phase the project in, as our capital campaign continues, then that's when we would add the permanent equipment. As you know from our previous introduction of ourselves, that our kind of free play design at our preschool is something that we're intending to carry into our elementary and early secondary school. And so having a lot of fixed equipment isn't really in our kind of in our play design to begin with, but we do want to have kind of one large fixture, but that would likely come at a later time. But we'd have the area prepared and ready for play, fenced in with appropriate appropriate free play equipment.
Understood. The root of the question was you're not planning on then doing the temporary one out in front of the parking garage. You just do this right away?
No, we would do that. I'm sorry. Thanks for clarifying. So we would continue to use it through this school year, the one on the south side of the property, the temporary one, and then we would prepare the new one for the beginning of next school year.
Okay, the temporary one's not built yet, though.
The temporary one is just actually the grass space. We're not building anything there. It's just the delineation of space that we're using. So we're not actually adding anything to it.
Okay, before you were going to put a fence in and paths and fence paths and all that, you're not planning on that then?
Temporary fencing, yes. But there's, again, that site there at the front is just a temporary space. So we continue to use that until this one is built.
Right. So my question, then you're not planning on putting all that temporary chain link in and everything you were doing before. You're just going to use it the way you're using it right now?
Well, we still have plans to put the temporary chain link in just for safety, but we'll remove that just as planned before and then carry on with the new set.
It was just a question because it seems like if you have this area approved and you're going to put your permanent fencing in, it would make a lot of sense to do that right away and just use it, but that's your business.
We could do that. We still have to think about removing the trees and things like that too. So it could happen sooner rather than later, but as we come into winter, maybe it's not a good time to make that change.
Yeah, it just seems it would make a lot of sense to do that instead of spend all the money for the temporary fence and remove it again.
We're trying to keep the kids away from the construction, and the dock area is pretty much where Bindorf accesses the building, and that's where construction deliveries and everything are at there too. So that's part of and that whole part of that first floor back there is blocked off from occupant use.
Yeah, I saw.
Other than the commercial kitchen and the dock, and then the reception area. Everything else is blocked off for demolition.
Yeah, I did see the sign that all the construction entrance had it all contractors had to come in that way.
So, as much as, kids love construction, so they don't want to be in it. And so we're trying to keep them, it's controlled access, I think they're working with some of the teachers to do some.
You keep them in that mold. We like it when they love construction after they grow up too.
Yeah. That's why we're all in this industry, right?
Yeah.
So.
The other comment, the shed, I think the shed would have to come back here and take a look at. We haven't seen anything, and with the way that grounds is, we would expect something more than just a typical rough shed that's put in somebody's backyard, because that is going to be highly visible.
Yeah, and we anticipated as much. We just wanted to signal what the, what we were thinking. But we anticipated we want to, really carefully consider what that shed looks like as it is, right? When you come around the bend, that's one of the first things you're going to see. So it's important to us, of course, as well, that it be something that that fits with, the general theme of the school, but also is something that's pleasant to look at.
Agreed. And the fencing, just so long as we saw the picture, but vinyl coating would be our standard, and I think the chain link, it makes a lot of sense around the playground area as long as it's vinyl coated. Okay, thank you.
Great. Brian?
I'll go quickly. So the shed, I agree, coming back to make sure that it kind of fits in within the property. The plantings for the bulb, shrinking the hatched area and making that a mountable curb with plantings in the center does make sense. When you look at now, it's a big parking lot that you can't drive in. So it would be nice to see that changed. The fence, no issue with. And the mention of the sidewalk around the surface lot, I am fine with it not being in there. If you put it up, no one's going to use it anyways. They're going to cut across. So I don't think you should put that sidewalk in just because the study told you to. So other than that.
Great, thank you. Patrick?
I don't really have much to add, other than I concur with the circle. It's a really large paved space. We should be looking at ways to reduce those hard surfaces. So, I pretty much concur with what's been said so far, especially the shed. So, that's it.
Great. Christy?
Yeah, I agree with my fellow colleagues here. I just thought the landscaping and the traffic bulbs could make a fun class project as well. Your bike parking location looks good. I did see that you're choosing the grid racks, which are less than ideal. They're known as wheel benders, because you really can only lock the wheel to that rack. So if you have a quick release tire, you can pop it off and steal that bike pretty easily. So there have been a lot of bike thefts this year, and even though you're kind of tucked back there, it probably is safe, but if someone were to leave their bikes there overnight, it could be an issue for you. Some other types of bike racks are like the inverted U bike racks are great, or the post and ring. A little more expensive, but might be worth it in the long run. I cannot wait to play on that play structure. So I approve of both of those, and I'm looking forward to bringing my kids down there to check them out. But yeah, everything looks great, and really appreciate all your organization and all your planning that you put forward. Thanks.
Thank you.
We're excited to have you down there to play.
All right, great.
Yeah, David and I were talking after we saw your post on LinkedIn with your bike drive. That you might be a good person to talk to about. We haven't really selected a bike rack yet.
Yeah.
We're just looking at different options, and initially we want to be as flexible as we can.
Yeah.
And to make sure things are in the right location before we cement them into the ground.
Yeah.
So
I was going to ask.
That always is a problem.
Yeah, I was going to ask, were you thinking that you would remove the racks in the winter for snow plowing or anything, or would they stay there? They'd be permanently bolted to the concrete there.
That is a discussion to be determined.
Okay.
So,
I think it's a really nice alternative to have the racks in the garage for the winter. They're protected. They're a little out of the way. I think that's a really good call. I think who knows, maybe see how this winter goes, but I think you could probably yeah, like you said, you have two cyclists right now, but hopefully that will grow. Hopefully that will grow. Well, yeah, your numbers doubled right here because you said 1 and then it went to 2. So hopefully that will grow over time. And but maybe for snow plowing, if that turns out to be a little bit tight there, maybe you can pull those out and just go with the garage parking.
Yeah.
But if your wheels get bent, I'll be there to fix them for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Susan?
I don't really have anything to add either. I concur with the comments already made, and I do like adding the grass in the center of the turnaround bulb, traffic bulb, with, again, the issue that the drive lanes may need to be a little wider, because I think similar from Rebecca said that currently the fire trucks probably would drive around that hatched area, so just to make sure that that's wide enough to handle that if they do have to come in that way. Otherwise, I think it looks great. I think having the playground where you've moved it makes more sense as well. And even though we don't get a say on the play equipment, I'd go for the bigger one, just because it makes sense. That's it, but it looks great. Thank you.
Yeah. Great. Rob?
Okay, couple of things on the traffic circle. I would agree with the comments that were made. And can you elaborate? You're saying if you strike the bicycle lane that heads to the south, and if you're biking to this side, you're expected to go down to the south entrance. Is that correct?
During drop off and pickup only. That would be encouraged because otherwise you have bikes trying to cross cars that are in queue and might not see them. Because we're not allowing cars to make a left-hand turn into that first driveway to the parking structure during drop-off and pickup. So the idea was not to allow bikes to do that either during those specific times. So if somebody comes and gets there before drop-off and pickup, yeah, they can go that way. But once that time period starts, then we just felt it would be just a really bad traffic. Somebody, you got kids in the car and you're trying to get them all ready and get them back, make sure the backpacks are closed, and you're watching the car in front of you. And, parents should be a lot more attentive during drop off and pickup because it is kind of a crazy time. But I've been in those lanes and I've been in those lines, and sometimes parents aren't paying close attention, especially for pedestrians and people crossing the queue line. So that's the thinking.
And as it stands now, you would come in and it's really, once you go around the traffic bulb, it's just a series of right turns to get in and out of the lot, except for the, when you get to the end of the service lot, that's when you do round to the left. But it's...
Yeah, so the bike lane, so let me, if I can just share my screen again real quick. What happened there is, so what you see here is, the bike lanes are on either side. So they can go in the south entrance and go up, a slight incline on one side of the garage, to the other part here, where the parking is. Oh my gosh, here we go. Okay, okay, let me try that again. So we have these bike lanes that exist in the wrap and around the traffic lanes as well. So during drop-off and pickup time, we would encourage the bikes to either enter through the south entrance to the parking structure, in which case then they could come in the lower portion, which now you can't see here. But and I didn't include, but you would come in here and then you would come up this incline inside the parking structure to this level, which is the same level as this driveway here. And that parking that's inside the garage is right here in this corner. Or the bikes could come all the way around, do the loop, and come in and go here if they didn't want to do the incline inside the garage. So, but the idea is to keep them with the flow of traffic rather than them crossing across the queue line.
Yeah, okay.
And then if they're going to park here, and I apologize, these blue boxes are in the wrong location. But if they are biking and they want to park where we were showing them up here, we would encourage them, because they're more likely they're students, we would encourage them to, get off here, become a pedestrian, walk their bike across the crosswalk, and down the sidewalk to the parking, to the outdoor parking. So again, it will be student education, just like it was for parent education, as we begin to implement this. It's just a matter of like, okay, this is how we're gonna do this today, and we're gonna, everybody can practice, or, ride your bike to work day.
I don't mean to belabor the point here, and I'll move on shortly. I just think I appreciate the efforts to get everyone to head south and go all the way around and up through the parking structure, if that's their route. I think it's a hard ask for a student. I don't think they're going to do that. I appreciate the effort. I was just thinking if that bike lane on the east side and the southern portion, if that's even warranted, if anybody is ever going to ride that route, if you could eliminate that pavement. But
well,
I appreciate the intent, and it's just kind of a funny situation. I get that crossing that traffic, and I'm bringing up questions more than solutions. So I'm going to keep going here in the interest of time.
Okay.
My next question was the striping for the fire lane on the south end is extraordinarily long. Is that by code, or why is that so long?
Because this is the current entrance into the WPS parking lot. And if somebody drives down here, they really can't get out. I mean, they physically could, but we're trying to, and this is something that WPS, I know they're reworking their site parking plan. So, right now, it would be hatched to this entrance. And they would probably add signage that says, do not enter, emergency vehicle access only. But it's possible, and I don't know that anybody from WPS is at the meeting tonight, but it's possible that, they may reconfigure this so that, they enter here instead of, and as well as here. So because 60% or more of the workforce is going to continue to remain from home, working from home, they don't need as much asphalt either. So they're kind of reconsidering their internal campus flow. So that's why that's shown that way.
Okay.
And saying up here.
A couple other points. Up in front of the entrance building, they're on A003. There is slow children crossing signs. There's one, but it's before the crosswalk. I understand there's going to be crossing within that whole parking area.
There already is one that exists there.
Okay. Oh, okay.
This is a new one.
Perfect. I would agree with the comments of I don't really want to pick out playground equipment. I would think that one thing, I don't know if there's a lot of accessible play items on those. I can't quite tell. And you can look into that more. And I'm not accessible in that you can get to them, but it engages children with mobility discrepancies. Yes. I like black vinyl fence. It doesn't fade. That's my preference for color. Okay, I think I'm done. Thanks for bearing with me.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Unless there are any other comments, questions for One City Schools on this particular item, I'd be happy to entertain a motion. Chris.
I'll move approval with conditions 1, 2, and 3 recommended by staff. Condition 4 modified to read specifications for the fencing and closing of playground shall be submitted to the city staff for final review. Fencing shall be black vinyl coated and not exceed 6 foot in height without additional review by Plan Commission. Condition 5 that the traffic circle, the core of the traffic circle, be curbed and landscaped with final approval by staff. Condition 6 that the shed details come back to the Planning Commission for final approval. And condition 7 that landscaping plan for the play area to be approved by staff.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Do I have a second? Any other discussion, Chris?
Yeah, a couple things. Doug, I left the traffic circle area approved by staff. The intent is that there's a detail here that shows the turning radiuses for the city's fire truck for buses. So intent would be just inside that, so that core, the intent wouldn't be a 10-foot diameter circle. It'd be that we do something that makes sense. It doesn't have to follow that exact turning layout, but something that makes sense that all the vehicles can get around, but then we keep a nice core and then some reasonable landscaping in there. That's why I left it by staff. If you have any questions, bring it back to Plan Commission.
That makes sense.
And then the landscaping condition for the play area, normally we would look at a final landscaping plan, but it's pretty minor. It's just to do something nice around that play area. And again, I think work with the applicant, and if it makes sense, it makes sense. If you have any questions, bring it back to the Plan Commission.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Unless we have any other- Yeah, Rob?
Yeah, more of a clarification. Talking about the playground, you said that you were going to install the fence and the play surfacing, or the
No.
fence at least, maybe not the play surfacing?
No, not to put, yeah, just the fence and the shed if possible.
Okay, and what your sequencing is, you're gonna have a fence up and then you're gonna be able to get your play equipment in there to get it installed? Is that gonna be an issue?
Part of the fence may have to be removed temporarily for access to do the site prep.
Okay. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, so.
Thank you, Rob. So I have a motion and I have a second, unless there are any other comments. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Terrific. There you go, you guys. Thanks for, thank you for coming again tonight.
They're coming again.
They have one, sorry?
They're coming again after
I know
two.
they are.
Oh.
Well, I know they are.
We like spending time with you guys. So.
Yeah. I
Real
know.
pleasure. Thank you all.
I know. All right, with that, going to shift gears here to item number 5C, the pre-hearing conference on the request by Compass Properties and the Neutral Project for consideration of a zoning permit for construction of a new mixed-use building at approximately 4600 to 4611 Monona Drive between Springhaven and Dean Ave, case number 2-016-2021. So with that, Nate and Matt, welcome.
Thank you for having us. We're excited to be here. I'll kick it off, and then I'm going to turn it over to our architects, Doug and Juan at Sellahars, and they're going to talk a little bit more about the presentation. Before I get started, Doug, can you share your screen? Sorry, Doug from the city of Monona. With our presentation so we can flip through it and present? Or should we share ours here?
We have a copy of it. We'll be able to share that.
Oh, you'll be able to see it. Okay, that sounds good. And we shouldn't present on for the Zoom members?
So we're going to, Elisa has a copy. She's going to share screen, and it should be on for all the Zoom participants as well.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Well, that's pulling up. I can give a little bit more detail on who is presenting this and a little bit more about the development group. So the Neutral Project and Compass Properties are doing a joint venture to develop the Bloom, which everyone knows exactly where that is after we've heard all the comments tonight on it. Sellahars is our design architect, and they will be presenting alongside me tonight. And then we also have Angus Young, who is our local architect of record and engineer of record, who will be working on the project as well. Both Juan and Doug have created a great new redesign for us. I know we came in front of Planning Commission this past summer and presented a design, and we decided to go back to the drawing board after hearing the comments and do something a little bit different, and we think it's a little bit more unique in respecting the neighborhood. So the Bloom, where it derives from the name, is from Blooming Grove, and we thought we would honor the heritage of Blooming Grove by calling the apartment building the Bloom. So the redesign is 1 unit less. It's 97 units. It's 4 commercial retail spaces and 167 total parking stalls. A part of our redesign, one of our goals that we had was focusing a little bit more on family support housing initiatives. So we added some larger 3-bedroom units, and we also added a significant amount of townhomes, which we believe will help and promote families living in that area for both us and the neighborhood. Doug, if you're controlling the slides, I'll just say next, and I think Doug from Salahars is going to do the same thing, and we'll just have you scroll down here. So you can scroll down to, I think it's slide 4. Maybe one more, actually. Yeah, that's perfect. Awesome. Thank you. So the neutral project was created to build carbon neutral or as close as possible developments. And a part of this is we created the neutral standard, which is to put our words into action to create carbon neutral developments. So our goal here with the bloom is to create as close as possible to eliminate embodied carbon emissions and minimize operational carbon emissions. And how we do that is first through design elements. So our design is going to be influenced by Passive House design principles, along with trying to achieve Energy Star certification. And then secondly is building. So most of our buildings are mass timber, and we like to utilize wood as our construction material. And so one of the things we like to say is our buildings are grown by the sun, because trees are grown by the sun. And that's one of the reasons why we use wood. But another reason is because it has a unique ability to sequester carbon, and our buildings then become carbon sinks, which furthers our goal to reduce embodied carbon emissions. And then the last thing we do after the building is built is we verify our approach through a third-party post-factum life cycle analysis. And in this analysis, it tells us exactly the amount of carbon emissions that is produced by the project. And then along with that, we run energy models to ensure that our operational carbon emissions will be lower than a traditional code-compliant building. Doug, you can move to the next slide. So a couple of aspects that are unique to this project, which we're very excited about, is building to Energy Star certification, building to Passive House principles. We're likely going to use photovoltaic, solar, and possibly solar thermal. We're adding green roofs. And then one of the really cool things that I'm excited about that we're utilizing on our Madison project is an EV car share along with an EV scooter and bike share, which we think will promote a more sustainable transportation system along with reduce the amount of cars on the site. Doug, you can move to the next slide. So our estimate from Angus Young is that it rains 115 days per year in Madison, and we want to use the most of it. So what we're doing is we're adding an extensive green roof system to capture and absorb the rainwater, which slows down the rate and volume of runoff. The roof also reduces the heat island effect, which is caused by the tendency of traditional roof systems to absorb heat. We are also planning to incorporate low flow fixtures, native landscaping, and reduce in stormwater and wastewater, which will be discussed later on by Doug in our presentation. You can move to the next slide here. So the last part of the neutral standard is just a couple of different categories that we like to focus on. That is fitness, and so we plan to have a robust fitness center here that will likely be on the first floor on Monona Drive. It might be a third-party operator, it might be our own operations. The second is designing better and more thermally comfort buildings through our Passive House principles. Third is mine. Fourth is nutrition, and then the last one is transportation, which we touched on earlier, but the shift towards sustainable transportation options will be supported through ample EV charging, EV bike share, or bike storage, and also a close proximity to bus and possibly Ubers and things like that. We're going to have an Uber pickup station as well. You can move to the next slide. So this is the last section here that I will discuss, and then I'm going to turn it over to Doug and Juan at Salahars. But I know there's a lot of discussion, and Doug, you can move to the next slide here. about, where the site's located and access points and things like that. So I think a lot of us know where the site's located. It's on the corner of Springhaven and Monona Drive, and then it goes down all the way to Dean. If you want to keep going here, Doug, if you can go one more slide. Actually, 2 more slides, I'm sorry. Yeah, you can keep going. Yeah, right here, that's perfect, if you want to stop there. So we put together a quick study and just kind of looking at different areas where we have bikes and bike paths, the different areas where we have traffic patterns and things like that. What we envision is that a lot of the traffic will be entered on Springhaven because our parking garage, the entrance to that, is right back there. And one of the things that I think we'd like to discuss with the commission tonight, and there's been a lot of discussion already about this, is the access on Gordon Avenue. I don't think we're opposed to actually removing that entirely and possibly just leaving that as is and not having an entrance there. Even though there's an entrance there right now, we'd remove that entrance completely. I think we have to talk with the city about speed bumps. That's definitely not our jurisdiction, but that's not something that we would have any opposition to. The other thing that's going to be discussed on later here is we are planning on having sidewalks on the Gordon Street. And I know that's not something that's really ideal there and not even there right now, but we do think that will be an added benefit for the neighborhood. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Doug at Selahars to finish his presentation, and then we'll open it up for Q&A after that. Thank you for having us.
Perfect. Thank you, Nate, and thank you to the committee for hearing us. I'm Douglas at Selahars, and this is my partner, Juan. So to continue where Nate left off, we can stay on this slide. Essentially how we view this project and how we view the massing is a mediator between the single-family residential to the west and the more commercial corridor of Monona Drive to the east. And we view this project as blending the two together, really bringing, let's say, the commercial aspect of the city with the residential aspect of the city, and making those two things blend together very, very seamlessly. You can go to the next slide. I'll just say next if that's okay. So you can see here the massing is broken into 2 separate volumes, 2 separate buildings, an L-shaped building and a bar-shaped building, with the long axis, of course, being in the north-south direction. So this long, slender massing allows for the building to really, let's say, maximize the amount of sunlight coming into each of the retail and residential spaces of the project throughout the day, which is of course desirable for tenants and renters alike. If you go to the next slide, the building is a 4-story building, with the 4th story being set back 8 feet on all avenues to really only keep a kind of 3-story presence on the street level and from the pedestrian perspective. And so to not really be, let's say, imposing on the urban context. In the ground floor, we have commercial throughout the L bar, the L building, which would be the anchor tenant being DMO Harris, 2 spaces for cafe and restaurant, a small space for things like a dog grooming shop or some small vendor of Monona themselves, and then a large fitness space as well. And then to the north we have townhouses, and to the west we have tenant access to the units above. We can go to the next slide. So this is just showing again the times of day, or times of year rather, and times of day, and the sun access for the building. So if you go to the next, this is more to study the shading of the site and how the massing is affecting the context. And really what you can see is pretty much all of the self-shading that's going to happen throughout the year is happening on the parking itself, the surface parking, and only really in the winter time do we cast long shadows that sometimes in the evening encroach a bit on the commercial, but otherwise throughout 75% of the rest of the year basically only self-shading on the site itself. You can go to the next thing, and the next one. So as you know, of course, we're in the Monona Drive corridor, the retail business zoning district of the city. And the site is 2.2 acres. We have, as Nate said, 97 units, which means about 990 square feet per unit. And this is about 45 units per acre. And then conversely, we do try to maximize as much free open space on the ground floor at grade as humanly possible, and combine that as well with the roof to achieve about 30% open space on the site itself. You can go to the next slide. So you can see here that the far left was something that you had seen before, and we decided to first take into consideration really the massing of the project itself, because this initial massing felt maybe a bit too boxy, a bit too, let's say, imposing for the urban fabric of Monona itself. And so we wanted to try massings that pushed the building back from Monona a bit, or broke the massing up into different volumes. And we landed on the final option here, where we have two separate buildings, which really create, if you go to the next slide, more of a feeling of a village and a project that allows comfortable pedestrian access between the two buildings. And we'll get into much more detail on this passage, this pedestrian corridor, what we're calling the Muse, which is a very, very important part of the project for us. You can go to the next slide. So here we can see the basement level, the ramp that the project is oriented now. North is to the right. The ramp, as Nate had mentioned, coming off of Springhaven to the basement, and 94 parking spaces in the basement. You continue on. At grade on the ground floor, we have, of course, as mentioned, the anchor tenant of BMO Harris, possible small retail directly adjacent, resident co-working, which could also be small retail depending, room for restaurant and cafe. That space is really meant for two different tenants. And then, of course, the studio fitness, which is both for tenants and the public alike. And then on the right, the building is entirely residential, but still with more public spaces of the tenants themselves, facing the street and on that public Muse, so facing the Monona corridor. And if we move forward, we can see we just have then a mixture of studios to 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms, with an emphasis then on the right of those larger units for families of the townhouses, and then even lofts in the next 2 floors. And when we set back, so you can see it becomes 1 bedrooms, and then the next floor where it steps back 8 feet all along the perimeter of the building. We have lofts on the right, but overall a very wide, and then as well 2 communal terraces for all of the tenants to enjoy the views of the city, looking to the east and to the south. And so what you can see is just a very good mixture of units and a variation of types that will bring a wide variety of tenants to the area and really create a diverse community in this area of Monona. If we continue on then. And then also, of course, important to us is again that step back at the 4th floor to really create a building that has a public presence of only 3 stories, where most of, and you can see the Monona Grove High School in the background, and some of the nearby the bakery or nearby retail and commercial is all 2 stories or so, between 2 and 3 stories in most of the neighborhood. So we want to really respect that characteristic of Monona. And if we keep going, same with this slide. We can move to the next. So Nate, did you want to discuss the parking study?
Yeah, thank you, Doug. So just wanted to touch quickly on parking. We've run some analysis here, and we might engage Strand to run a full parking study for us, but we ran internal analysis, and looking at different usages of the stalls, because it is a mixed-use development with BMO and other retailers. You have this really synergistic opportunity for parking between the retail and the residential. And what we found is just playing out the different demand options. We have a total approximate maximum usage of 164 stalls. And right now our code required amount would be 194 stalls, but that includes 100% allocation for BMO Harris, the cafe space, the gym amenity, which the city is defining as a retail space, even though we're viewing it as an amenity space, which makes up 24 of the 194. And then we also have the 97 multifamily units. And so what we're requesting, and we would like a discussion on this, so when we come back for our formal approval, we can hopefully have something that Plan Commission will agree to. But we're requesting a variance for the total required amount, which would be traditionally 194, to be reduced down to 164. And the reason being is because of this demand study that we undertook, and we believe that 164 is very sufficient for us, and we're even going above and beyond that to 167. And so that's a point of discussion for the commission tonight.
Great. Shall we move forward?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks, Doug.
Perfect. Excellent. So now we'll get into the actual, the architecture of the proposal. So for us, not only, of course, was the massing important to integrate into this this feeling of the urban fabric of Monona, but also very important to us was really considering, let's say, the local architecture, the tropes of having very gridded buildings that have some sort of latent neoclassicism in them, with the cornices and the bandings and these column orders, as well as the striations of the bricks and the cornices of the metal on the high school or the Methodist church, even having this kind of ornamental quality of the roof. All of this kind of language pertains to the community of Monona itself. And then if we go to the next slide. Also, of course, we're considering, let's say, a larger picture, a zoomed out picture of the let's say, the architectural language of Wisconsin itself. And for us, that has really two kinds of language. One being, of course, this neoclassicism of the more civic icons of the city, the public buildings being, the state capitol or the historical society, with their strong bases, piano rusticos, their piano nobile, and their cornices, really following, let's say, the tropes of classical architecture. And then on the other hand, you have a more vernacular kind of architecture, a factory or a kind of industrial architecture of, the late 19th, early 20th century that has, permeated Wisconsin and really is also part of the urban fabric of our cities and towns. And so between these two, if we go then to the next slide, we wanted to take these kind of civic icons, we go to the next, as well as the industrial vernacular, and really create something that is a vernacular icon, something that pertains to, let's say, both languages of architecture and really respects, let's say, the lineage and history of architecture in Wisconsin and in Monona specifically. So if you go to the next slide, a kind of confluence of those things. So next, please. And then in order to achieve that, we wanted to achieve it, let's say, in a relatively subtle and economic way that also, again, goes back to that kind of strong brick architecture of Monona itself. And so we put together a diagram here that really shows the different layers of the project that you're about to see, with a very strong structural base with normal mortar and brick coursing, and as it moves up, there becomes a gradient of more mortar that's placed either between the bricks or on the surface of the facade to create a more ornamental facade, where the project in our minds almost disappears then into the sky as it becomes lighter and moves upward. So if we go down to the next slide. Here you can see those striations and that gradient from a really, let's say, strong and prominent base at the retail level, and as it moves up, it becomes lighter and lighter, and with that step back fourth story, even lighter with metal panels that would almost reflect some of the sky and hopefully disappear for us. That we want the building to really feel, let's say, timeless and contemporary, but at the same time very soft and inviting, and especially with the material palette being very warm and inviting as well, and really having as well a strong corner presence with these deep coffers of the facade for the BMO bank, but then at the same time a kind of language that is very very light and fragile towards the top. And if we go to the next slide. On the other hand, we also have the opposite corner, which again follows, let's say, a similar idea or similar logic of creating the facade, but has different window openings, different spacings. We wanted to have these two projects be differentiated from each other, or rather the two massings be differentiated from each other, to really, again, give a variety of the architectural expression and make sure that it feels kind of like a village, less like a super block. So in that sense, we wanted to create variety, but all within the same system. And you can even see here that the striations are vertical from left to right rather than from top to bottom. And this creates more of a feeling of let's say, row housing or a very residential feeling of architecture, as opposed to the more commercial on the left. If we go down. So here is really the public corridor of the project, an incredibly important aspect that allows both pedestrians and residents alike to commune and come together and have a space for dining, for a cafe, to have a coffee, even to just sit and read, to meet a friend, etc. We really wanted to create a very inviting space between the two projects that is pushed up against Monona corridor, Monona Drive corridor, and invites pedestrians to actually walk through the project and explore the not only the features, let's say, of the plantings and the vegetation and of course the retail, but also just be a member of this community and really have a space of belonging for everybody in Monona. And it acts really as a passage for us via foot, a pedestrian passage from let's say the commercial zone of Monona Drive back to the neighborhood on Gordon. If you move down to the next slide. Here again, we just see that gradient in more detail as it moves up and the building becomes visually lighter and lighter. Next slide. And this is then achieved with a relatively similar material palette from, again, these two different types of treatments of brick. Anodized aluminum with the overhangs of each of the storefronts and the townhouses, and then standing seam steel panels at the top level, the fourth floor, and brick pavers as well, to give a kind of warm, inviting feeling to the ground surface of the project, specifically in the Muse, especially in the Muse. If we move to the next. So here you can see how that material palette plays out, and it's a very warm and inviting material palette. Let's say self-similarity of everything feeling, relatively homogeneous, but all working together to create a relatively soft building. If we go to the next. Then stormwater management, of course, for us is also incredibly important to the project, not only to mitigate runoff, but also to put water back into the groundwater resource. And so, between the green roofs, the extensive green roofs that Nate had mentioned, and also the at-grade landscaping, as well as many planters as possible on the paved surfaces, and even in the overhangs of the project, including intensive green roof systems within those trays above each of the retail and residential portions, as well as this stormwater retention garden, which will be a beautiful feature, not only to, again, filter water and put it back into the groundwater resource, but also to gather around as pedestrians move from the public Muse back to the neighborhood itself. And of course, our goal is to exceed the requirement for rainfall storage on site and move to 1 inch rather than simply a half an inch. And then obviously to decrease the rate of runoff for the city. If you go to the next slide. And so also important to us is really considering the actual landscaping and the type of vegetation being used. We want to use a palette that's of course native to Wisconsin and requires as little maintenance as possible, as little water, additional water as possible outside of the rainwater. And so really creating something that's much more durable and wild, but at the same time considering, of course, we want to have this be beautiful year-round, so the plantings should reflect that in their seasonal shift, and we will consider types of plants that blossom late in spring or die out late in the fall, and even evergreen species that will be green year-round. So really a variety, and then of course, as mentioned before, this stormwater garden, this retention pond that will be an attractive feature both for residents and for the community. And we go to the next. And yes, just again to emphasize the importance of the negative space between the two massings for us, it really is, let's say, the focal point of livelihood for any civic building, any building that's really giving back to the community. It is it's all about its public space, and so we really think that this muse, this public corridor connecting the two buildings with their tenant amenities and the commercial amenities will be an inviting way of both bringing the community into this development, but also allowing them to make it their own and really have a place that they can gather and meet friends or have a coffee, etc. in the city. It's really a kind of mediator for us from the, let's say, the busy traffic of Monona to a more quiet and peaceful place just off of that. Next slide. So we would say in conclusion that we want to create an iconic development for Monona, and we want to, of course, carry with it the language of architectural gestures from Wisconsin that are both familiar and yet new in this project. And we will, of course, want to create a warm and inviting project through the material palette with its broken down massing to feel really more like a village that connects the commercial corridor of the city to the more single-family residential on the west side. And we want to create a project that actually inspires more sensible development in the area with a kind of timeless feeling and really allow this rapidly growing city to have a benchmark, not only in terms, of course, for sustainability, but also in terms of its architectural presence and beauty for both the future and benefit of Monona. So thank you, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you. Nate, was there anything else that you wanted to say before the commission offers that?
No, we would welcome any questions the commission has, and would love to give some responses.
Okay, great. Thank you. Rob, would you like to start?
Sure.
Oh, sorry. My bad. Doug.
All right.
Hang
Thank
on.
you for that presentation.
Hang on, Rob. I neglected to jump to Doug first. I apologize.
That's okay.
Since it's almost 10 o'clock, it's my excuse. Go ahead.
9 o'clock. So I'll just call out a few discussion points here. As already mentioned, this is the second pre-hearing seeking feedback on the proposal. Firstly, I just want to address the mailings, as they've been brought up a couple times. That's the city's responsibility. That is not the applicant's, as was alluded to in some of the received comment. I did work on refining the mailing list as it went out the first time, knowing that certainly a portion of Gordon Avenue was missed, particularly rental units. We go off the Dane County access Dane data. It's difficult, but I will certainly be working to any of the public comment that we got, folks that said they didn't receive it, making sure that they're added to the list and just trying to iteratively add to this so that we catch as many people that were missed as possible. So I'll be going through that and just wanted to put that on the record. The details of the proposal have already sort of been laid out, studio through to 3-bed units with townhomes and lofts included, with a degree of retail as well on the ground floor. I did want to call out the lot coverage. As was mentioned, just over 21,000 square feet is at grade, green space, making up about 22% of the site, with 9,500 proposed for the rooftop, 9.9% as well. So just for the commission to kind of discuss the intent of the 30% green space requirement that the city looks to adhere to. This has, rooftop, there has been some precedent over at the Current, for example, but just discussing, how this proposal meets with that. Also discussing some of the setbacks. That was something that was discussed at the first pre-hearing. Its relation to Monona Drive, but also how it relates to, the Gordon Avenue side, potential for landscaping buffer to sort of work with the sidewalk there as well. It wasn't necessarily addressed too much in the materials, so I think just specifically setbacks from the property line would be interesting. Site circulation has, of course, been mentioned. As proposed, there are 3 curb cuts. Certainly the possibility of removing the Gordon Avenue curb cut is something for discussion. There could be the possibility there of adding more green space if you were to take that out, or adding a couple more parking stalls potentially, depending upon the will. Again, parking, 167 of those stalls at the moment. I was pleased to hear the applicant discuss some of the alternative transportation methods. That was something I flagged in the staff report, bike share, car share, those types of things. I think certainly discussing the requested variance to the parking will be important to help shape this moving forward, as well as the complementary retail uses that may be needed. Specifically, a determination, I think, on whether the fitness center is going to be a tenant amenity or a public space, therefore needing parking, I think will be an important piece to clarify. Architecture was discussed, certainly in depth. I did just want to bring up pretty much 300 linear feet of frontage along Monona Drive. Possibility there of maybe breaking that up a little bit more with step backs and things like that. Certainly recognizing the 4th floor step back, but if there's something that's more sort of horizontal, not just vertical as well, I think that might help with the pedestrian scale. This is part of the Monona Drive Urban Design Guidelines, which does call for high quality materials as well as the step massing, so those elements are certainly addressed here with the masonry as well as the 4th story step back. Just looking for some discussion possibly on the townhome units. They do look like they are accessed internally rather than necessarily a walk-up. So that may be something to the design, to the architecture worth discussing. The potential buffer, landscaping buffer, particularly as it relates to Gordon Avenue, how that would work, and possibility for further discussion of future landscaping. Especially how it relates with Gordon Avenue, the sidewalk that's proposed, and certainly stormwater. Staff's pleased to see the sort of goal there of sort of greater standards than would be required, but certainly the new county ordinance coming in as well. This most likely will need to adhere to that once it's a formal submittal. So yeah, just wanted to call out a few items there for discussion, and that's it for me.
Thank you. Rob.
Do they maybe want to respond to any of that before we get into things? So I don't know if that.
Yeah.
Double up? Is that okay?
Sure.
Nancy?
Yes, that's fine, Nate.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, Doug, just to give a little bit of follow-up, the townhomes on Springhaven will be accessed off the street. There is a rendering of that Doug had shared earlier. I think it's rendering 3 or 4. And those are access on Springhaven. They have a door, separate entry. They likely will have a back door into our corridor, but their main entry will be from Springhaven. The landscaping you brought up, that's still something we are finalizing through schematic design. And when we come back to Plan Commission for approval, we'll have a more detailed landscaping plan. Right now, our plan is in the Muse corridor to have birch trees, and then also to have birch trees likely behind on the corner of Gordon and Dean. And then we'll have a more extensive landscaping plan next time around for our formal approvals. The other item is we are still figuring out whether the fitness center will be a tenant space or a more of a complementary amenity space for our tenants. And I guess a question I would put back to you is if it is a complementary tenant space, then would the parking requirement be automatically reduced due to the non-retail and the nature of that space?
Okay. Thank you, Nate. Rob?
Ready? Okay. I'm going to start with parking just because that was the last thing mentioned. Looking at the proposed plan as it sits right now, it doesn't meet the parking standards for as laid out in our code ordinance. And by my count, you'd be losing 3 stalls to meet that code because you need to have parking lot islands per every 12 stalls. Has that been looked at all?
What was that? Say the last piece, Rob?
If you look at the bank of parking stalls on the far west side of the property, it's about, I think it's 27 stalls in a row.
Right.
Yeah. With no parking lot islands. You'd require 2 there. And then likewise in front of the building, or right behind the building, there's a run of 16. So meeting our parking standards, you'd lose 3 stalls there, which is something I noticed. Okay, backing up a little bit. A few things that I like about the project. I like the sustainability efforts. I had one question. You talked about mass timber. You like to use mass timber, but then at the last time you met, you said you didn't know if you're going to be able to use mass timber for this construction. Has that changed, or can you give an update on if that's even part of this proposal?
We haven't made a final selection on our structural system yet. We're looking at a potential hybrid system that would be a CFS, cold form steel, CLT, which is a mass timber material, stands for cross-laminated timber. So we're looking at that right now, and we're running pricing exercises. I would say probably by the next time we present in front of Plan Commission, we'll have a final determination on the exact structural elements of the project.
Okay. In general, I like the building. I like the design a lot. There was a lot of thought put into it. I think it's exactly, I thought it was industrial when I first saw that, and there was a great explanation of how you came to that design, and I applaud it. I like the whole concept behind it. I like the step back. I like the use of materials. I like the gradation of colors and the brick. That part I like a lot. It's going to be impactful, but I think brick, it ages well. The Muse I like. I wish it were bigger. I like the green infrastructure, like I said. Alternate transportation models. But ultimately it kind of goes back to the last time we were here at a pre-grant conference, and some of the things brought up by me and other commissioners were the density of the site. It was too dense. Another thing we brought up was affordable housing units. I'd like to see that. This is a great place for that, I think. You touched on the access on Gordon, and on further, review of that, removing that access, I think, would be ideal. And I made the comment last time about I like not having access off of Monona Drive, and I think I still stand by that. But there is going to be a lot of added traffic and stress to that street. And then finally, the usable green space. Reaching that that goal of 30%. And I understand using the green roof as a precedent for that, but that's quite a bit of the percentage of green space is being achieved through that unaccessible space on the roof. I like what it does. I would like if there was more usable green space on the ground level, which goes back to the density of the entire project. I still think it kind of overwhelms the neighborhood, and some of your graphics actually help kind of solidify my views on that. It's a big project. That said, I think it's a good use of the space. I like the project generally speaking. It's just kind of the size and scale of fitting into the neighborhood. Anything that happens there is going to increase traffic potentially on Gordon, undoubtedly. I mean, if you put a restaurant right there, there's going to be more traffic. Anything you put there is going to be more traffic, and having that as just an open green space for everyone to use in the community would be a great thing. But it's a redevelopment site or a potential redevelopment site. It's just how we can thoughtfully do it is the question. And that's what I'll make sure we'll get with this proposal. So I'll leave it there for now.
Okay. Thank you, Rob. Susan?
Yeah, I guess I have some of the same concerns. I do like the idea of, I think, of removing the access on Gordon. The green space, I think, is a concern, and I guess I also am wondering what the setback is on Monona Drive. It still looks from the drawings like it's right up there, and we talked about that a little bit last time. When I drove by today and just kind of looked at the setback of even the Monona Drive Dean Avenue sign, it's about 8 feet from the edge of the sidewalk, and I'm just wondering, do you have an idea what the setback from Monona Drive is right now, or to me that contributes to the density feel.
We do. It's from the front corner at Dean and Monona. It's 8 feet. Or 9 feet, just behind the sign.
So 9 feet from the edge of the curb.
From the setback.
From the
sidewalk.
From the sidewalk. Okay,
Yeah,
so it doesn't matter where the sign is. No,
Exactly.
okay.
From the end of the sidewalk. Let's say the closest portion of the sidewalk.
Okay, that's part of what I was wondering, if you'd have room for some landscaping in there to help soften it a little bit, and maybe that gives you enough.
One thing not mentioned in the presentation is that we're considering getting rid of a lot of that brick paving in the front of the project and adding a lot more green to that. And so, yeah, just making that as well, like more of a green space in the front of the project as well as the back.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess, I was looking at the Gordon Avenue side and thinking if you reduced the building size just by like a unit kind of coming back, on each, I was just looking at a way to kind of reduce the density a little bit, to deal with the parking, and I hadn't noticed, but Rob's right, the point about the islands that would be required in the back adds something to it. And you didn't get an answer to the question about the fitness center. I would assume if it's complementary, that would affect the parking requirement, would it not?
No,
Or it wouldn't? Okay, so there you go, the answer. So I guess I think that's still a concern, it is an attractive looking project, but I am still concerned about the density and would like to see a little more green space on even the Gordon Avenue side, if there's a way to do that. I don't know if I really have anything else concrete here. The retention, I guess the retention, can you say more about that plan? It's not clear to me what the water retention plan is. You mentioned a pond. Is that like an open pond, or are you talking about underground there where there could be green space above it, or what exactly are you thinking for that?
It has more wetland vegetation in it, and it really just collects the rainwater and has some standing water, but it also and then filters that water and puts it back into the groundwater resource. So it's really, let's say, an active system, active small ecosystem that's working on the site, and it's mostly like, let's say, longer grasses and a few trees coming out of it, birch trees in this case. So yeah, it's let's say like a space for for the water to stand but be filtered as it goes back into the
Or a
groundwater.
rain garden kind of thing. Okay. I think that's all for now.
Thank you, Susan. Christy?
Thanks, guys. I do want to mention that I do live on the block, so Eric, who spoke here, is one of my neighbors, as many of my neighbors spoke and mentioned my kids, who are one of the 24 children that play on that street. So I will limit my comments just to avoid the appearances of impartiality. But I do want to say that, our street is fully parked 9 months of the year. So that the limited parking on your site is definitely going to be a challenge. I would invite you to come and sit in my driveway at 3:30 in the afternoon any day, Monday through Friday, when school is in session, so you can see what happens on the street with that entrance being on Gordon. I also encourage you. I know you mentioned talking with Strand, and you really probably want to talk with them about traffic flow analysis as well. That intersection of Spring Haven and Monona Drive is just something else. A few days ago, and the reason being, when someone is heading northbound and someone is heading southbound, both of those will make left turns at the same time. The driveway, the entrance to Spring Haven is not lined up with the driveway of the Rocky Rococo's development. So the cars are staggered and nobody knows quite what to do there. And so just the other day, I was turning and I saw a car do a crazy move trying to weave around with high volume traffic at that time. Thinking about potentially 100 to 200 more cars going through that intersection is just not going to work. You also have the laundry traffic and the Rossi's Pizza traffic flowing out from a driveway that is about 5 feet from Monona Drive, and those cars pull across Spring Haven, blocking that lane while other cars are trying to turn left onto Spring Haven, and it's accidents waiting to happen all day long. And then I just want to say, the green roof is, I love the idea of green roofs, but boy, everyone I've seen, no matter how hardy the plants are that you're going to put there, and you're going with, durable and natural plantings, plants do require water, and we do have droughts. And every green roof I've ever seen is crunchy and struggling at some point. So you're really going to want to think about that, because this is a massive expanse of green roof. And then I really think you should rethink the birch trees. Birch trees are incredibly fragile. As climate change is changing our zones, birches are struggling even more in this environment, and I think you should probably rethink that choice.
Patrick?
Can I start with a question? And I guess it would be a question for Nate. What rents are we looking at? What demographic are we looking at in this project? What rents are we looking at in this project? Who are we trying to attract to this building?
Yeah, we haven't finalized our performing yet, so I can't give an exact rental rate, because I actually don't even know. It depends on the amount of units we have and the price of construction. But our target demographic for those townhomes is definitely families, and we're tailoring the design of the townhomes to families, along with the 3 beds.
So a three-bedroom unit would cost how much for a family, do you think? Do you guesstimate?
I don't even want to guesstimate, because we don't even have our rent schedule finalized yet.
So would I be correct in stating that there's not really an effort to provide any reasonable, affordable housing in this project?
Yeah, we actually did look at affordable housing, and we've been running performas on affordable housing, and we looked at 3 different project initiatives, sustainability being one of them, affordable housing being another, and family support housing being the third. And it's hard to make all 3 work on the project, because sustainability increases your cost of construction significantly, at least by 10 to 15%. So then you have to look at, okay, how do you make that work with your rents? And in order to make that work, you have to go for sure with market rate. And so then we derived and said, okay, we have to go with market rate, but we want a family support housing aspect. So then we said, okay, what could we do to add in a family support housing aspect to the project? And then we came up with the townhomes. So townhomes and sustainability along with family support housing is kind of our three initiatives, not affordability.
Gotcha. So we're going to take away we're going to take away affordable units on that parcel that exists now and replace them with solely market rate units. That's the plan.
I think there's only three, if I'm correct, what would be classified as affordable rents. I don't think they're technically affordable housing. Is that the correct assumption?
Gotcha. And then also there's existing, as we heard earlier tonight, there's existing businesses there, commercial businesses there that they serve a specific need in the community where people can get a start. And what I was kind of hearing tonight was how some of those commercial units are used as essentially a business incubator. And when we take those things away and we don't replace them, it really kind of goes counter to what I guess the idealistic thought of what Monona should be, and that's making things equitable and attracting diverse groups of people to Monona and a diverse economic strata. So a new business essentially has a harder time starting, and I guess the whole point of what I'm saying here is that in a project like this, maybe it's worthwhile to pursue a business incubator and look at state and federal grants in order to accomplish that, and have some of those retail units be available as a business incubator. So the gentleman here with the skateboard shop has a place to start. I mean, I come from a background where 10 years ago I opened a restaurant in a strip mall next to a cash store, and everybody told me I would fail, but it was affordable for me to do that. And now 10 years later, I have 5 of them. So I think that as we're planning projects like this, we really should think of how it's going to be received and how it's going to perform years down the road, and what real benefit is going to be given to the city, especially when we're talking about seeking TIF money. And when I look at TIF and you see there's a but-for provision for TIF, and I really can't figure out for the life of me how you would not be able to fill your building when we're in the midst of a national housing crisis with further assistance from the city. So I like the design of the building, but I feel that it would look great on the Capitol Square with another 15 stories. I think it would look great on East Washington Avenue with another 15 stories. I don't know if it fits the scale of that neighborhood. And I think it significantly changes that neighborhood and the feel, and it significantly changes the experience of every resident in that neighborhood. And I'm not sure that's positive. So that's my thoughts. And we talked about affordable housing last time you were here, and you mentioned that you were going to look into it, and it looks like you have. But I guess I'm disappointed that wasn't more of a focus. So thank you.
Sure. I'm just going to go in order of what's in the staff report here. When it comes to land use, I think the CDD design makes perfect sense to go through it. The PCD format would make perfect sense. Lot coverage, it's already been discussed regarding green space. I think that's a significant issue. We talked about that previously. It really comes down to this is just too big of a project for this site. The density is one aspect of it, but also just the footprint of the building and the parking takes up too much of a significant piece of the property. Setbacks, I do like how the building is oriented towards the Monona Drive and not to the residential aspect. The buffer off of the sidewalk is important for that landscaping. We talked about referencing Fairway Glen down the road, which was another project that was done to really look at how do you connect Monona Drive with residential neighborhood behind it and incorporate those different aspects and making sure that you're able to be up on the drive, your parking's behind, but also be able to integrate well with the neighborhood behind you. Circulation, this is where I actually have some disagreement with my colleagues here. I understand the use of Gordon Avenue or by residents, and I also, if I look at this project and look at traffic flow, I don't want people traveling north on Monona Drive to be taking a left on Spring Haven. As mentioned before, that's a disaster to have people going left to enter Spring Haven, to enter the site. Either they enter turning left at the light, and either the BMO Harris drive-through, which we talked, I think, previously of making that a two-way rather than just a one-way out. That is one way to fix the issue. And if that's not the case, accessing from Gordon Avenue, I do believe is a better option than having people turn left on Spring Haven. I do agree with the concerns of having people routed onto Gordon, which would default to having the two-way traffic through the BMO Harris entry exit point. Parking, yeah, this is always a confusing statement or section where there tends to be moving pieces. I'm glad it was noted about the parking islands. The fitness area, if I'm hearing that it's purely for residents, I would believe it wouldn't be in the count. It's only if it's got some public. But Chris will know much more about the parking ordinance. He has it memorized. I don't. So I will move on to, let's see, the architecture and massing. I actually agree. I think this building looks, Patrick, you said it exactly what I was thinking previously of. I like the look of the building, and when I think of that building, I think, boy, am I over on East Wash or West Wash? And it really does. It's a good building for a different type of fit, a different neighborhood. This does not complement the neighborhood or neighboring buildings as it is right now. So I struggle, despite the design of the building being a great design, I don't think it complements the area for this. And I will leave it there.
Okay, a lot of great comments. Couple things to address first. There was some questions from the speakers. I just want to be clear, everybody understands that we don't make decisions or approvals based on whether the city has more income or less income from a project. We have certainly targeted areas for different types of buildings, different types of constructions, a lot of them. But we wouldn't approve a project because we think it's going to bring more money in because it's got a lot of residences. And on that vein, I know another speaker, he might even still be here, spoke to the usage of TIF financing. We have nothing to do with TIF financing. That is not in our purview. And in fact, it goes to some other comments, and I believe the city of Madison is struggling with this right now. We really don't have any authority to ask for, what should we say, workforce, I won't say it that way. We have no authority to ask for affordable housing. I mean, we can look at projects and what they are and if they fit the area, but to get that ability to say this needs to be affordable housing, that has to go through, really CDA has that authority, because if we start giving them money, then we can tell them what we want built with that money. But as a plan commission, we certainly look at what it's going to be and what it's going to hit, but we have no ability to say, I want this to be affordable housing. That has to go through some incentive. And I know if you're following, Madison's struggling with this right now, because I know the mayors came out talking about it and said, you know, we can ask, but we have no authority to require. And if we want to confirm that, we could confirm that with Mr. Cole, but I believe that's the case. So it's an ask saying, hey, think about this. And I totally agree, Patrick, on the incubator space. I think it's so important to have incubator space for businesses. So those are a few of the formalities to get all the way. The reason I shook my head, I'll just get this out of the way too right away, on the workout space, if it's just for residents or if it's public, well, that's today. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, that commercial space is still there. We've struggled with this for the last 30 years on Monona Drive, where we've had a use there and it says, well, we don't need much parking for our use. And you remember, go up Monona Drive, there's these huge buildings there with small parking lots. Well, they didn't need that, but you know what? The use turns over, and we have to look at a use and what's being built. We have to look at it for the long haul. So don't go and decide I'm going to make it just residents now because I can save a few stalls, because I don't believe we can reasonably take that into consideration, and that's why I was talking about that. The base thing I'll start with, and I said this last time you were here, this is too much building for the site. It's too dense. 45 dwelling units per acre right next to single-family residential, in my mind, is way too much for the neighborhood. And the neighborhood, I think, came and spoke to it, and I'm sure they'll be back speaking to it again, but that's a lot of units to put right next to single-family. And that's where we have our issues all the time with zoning. We have a zoning here, and now we've got it right next to single-family. And now we have a commercial zoning where we had a fairly benign use with a bank and some green space and some small businesses, a tavern. But now we're talking about changing that use and putting a big apartment building right there. And I'll go back. I'm going to jump all around. You're going to have a hard time following me. I like your architecture. I think you've done a great job with incorporating the brick. There's things I would change, but this all comes back to me to being too much density for this site. Number one, for what the site can handle, but number two is really from the neighborhood. I think this overwhelms the neighborhood, and as much as you want to say that this is a, what was it? I wrote it down somewhere.
Transition.
Oh, it's like, it feels like a village. Just, if you compare it to that neighborhood, it doesn't feel like a village. It feels overwhelming. So I don't know how to reconcile that for the project you're proposing. There's too much there. Parking, I don't know how we can have only 42 commercial stalls and say, well, we're going to share 27 of them. You know, that math for me doesn't work. I think there's some working between that, but I think to say over half of that commercial is actually going to be shared for the residential is a lot. Access to Monona Drive, I would say absolutely not. That was a huge safety issue. That's the biggest reason we rebuilt all Monona Drive and combined all those access points, was to get rid of more people, especially right at a stoplight intersection, coming in and out. I'm intrigued by Brian's comments. I think I agree we got to get people coming in if we do this in and out of that stoplight intersection, and there still maybe could be a way to get two-way traffic coming off of Dean Avenue. Doug, you handled the notifications fine. I think, I mean, the explanation. I apologize again to all the people that were here that say we weren't notified. Anybody in that neighborhood should know what's going on with a project of this scope. Question for the developer. Do you control the properties right now?
Sites are not owned by us, no.
Do you control them? Do you have accepted options or some way do you have control of the properties if this were to go ahead?
We are negotiating purchase and sale agreements right now.
Yeah, I found it very odd that the property owner would come if they were under your control and speak against it.
She's not a property owner. She's a tenant in that building.
Okay, thank you. She said she owned it, but it must be the business.
She owns the business inside the building.
Okay, thank you. All right. I have a question on your, I'm starting with the water quality plan. So the first thing I'll say is it's impressive. If you're going to get a 74% TSS reduction, that's impressive. That's a great goal. And again, with additional infiltration, impressive. You know, some of your goals here are great. And if you can get that with the plan you've shown, I think, wow, that's awesome. My question was townhome access off the street. It was brought up, but after you mentioned that, I looked at it again. It just doesn't look like an entrance. So I guess my question would be, part of that access off the street is to give it that closer to the street residential feel, and it doesn't look like it has it from the elevations that I was looking at. I know I showed it. This one? Oh, there we go.
No, that's the wrong one, sorry.
Well,
If you flip to the,
here, I got it, I found it, this one.
5, yeah.
If anybody can see it, that's just not the kind of townhome feel we're talking about. It looks like that might be a door, but it might not. So anyhow, that's a minor detail, because I mean, I'm hitting you with the density and the size of this project. I agree that with the massing on Monona Drive, number one, it needs more of a setback. You're looking at 9 feet, and I had the figures last time. The only thing we didn't have was the current because the sidewalk wasn't poured. The current, and we need to, everybody drive by and see what that feels like. The current is a big building. It feels big when you drive by it. That one's 15.5 foot off the sidewalk. The Fairway Glen is anywhere from 14.5 to 18. Garver Commons, which is another one near us, it's not in Monona, near us, that one's anywhere from 14.5 to 20. So when we're talking 9 feet off the sidewalk, that's substantially closer, and that's, for me, that's intimidating when it's that close to Monona Drive, or especially if you're on that sidewalk. So I think it's too close. And I think the massing is too big for the neighborhood. And I think on Monona Drive that we need some building articulation, something that's just a long straight face. It's 300 feet. That's a lot. Green space, I agree with the previous comments. The 30% is meant to be on the site. The green roof is a whole different issue. It's a lot of it's water quality and such, but it's not green space where you see it on the site. And I can't say every project we've ever done has hit that 30%, but they come close, and when they don't, then we look for even additional landscaping and site features that can make up for that to give it some more of a feel. And there's certainly things you could do for that. Love all the brick. I think that's a great material to be using there, and it fits well. I am scattered on this, aren't I? That's good for me for now. Oh, I agree with Rob's comment on the parking lot islands. We like to break that up and get some trees going in those parking lots, so that's a good comment. For me, the real big one is the size of this project and the density, and I think we should give some serious talk to, is it 45 dwelling units per acre appropriate right next to a single-family residential area? I don't believe it is. We had this issue before, even on Broadway, where they wanted to put some apartments in. It was backing right up to single-family residential, and they're putting this massive building right next to that, and we turned it down because of that. Now, I know the applicant wasn't really happy, but we went together as a commission, looked at it, and said, you can't put that kind of a building right on top of single-family.
You gotta have townhouses or something, but there's no space to do that.
Right, and it is across the road. There it was right next to the property line, but this is a much, much larger project. So I think, out of respect for the applicants, we need to talk about that. And is this a proper density? Is this a proper size on that lot? Do we feel it's appropriate? I'm starting there. I'm saying, I think this is too much building for that site. I said it last time. I still believe it. And after listening to the neighbors, I got to say I believe in it even stronger after the public comment we've had tonight.
Do you know what, because you do have like an unbelievable historical knowledge, do you remember what the density in comparison is with Fairway Glen? I know it backs up to multifamily.
I don't. Certainly it's going to be substantially less, and I don't have any way to give you a good estimate. I would guess it's, you have that, Christy?
55 units
Is it 55?
in Fairway Glen.
No, that surprises me.
And do you remember what kind of acreage it was? I'm just kind of in comparison.
Oh, I thought you meant per acre. Okay.
55 units. Sorry.
Just 55 total, yeah, because I said 55 per acre, that shocks me. My guess was it was in the 30 neighborhood, but I couldn't tell you for sure. Doug's looking it up.
30 units per acre.
That would be in the, yes.
45, right.
But there again, Fairway Glen, it's off the road a little bit,
Yeah.
and then they've got some stairways and some fences and pillars and things, just kind of breaking it up on a lot of really great landscaping. But drive by there and look, and that 14 to, what did I say that is, 14.5 to 18 isn't too much room for all that landscaping and having some reasonable green space there. This This building is a really well thought out building. I love the thought you put into this. I love all the sustainable effort you're putting into it. I mean, this is good. It's just, for me, it's too big.
Yeah.
It's too much to put right next to single family. Doug, go ahead.
The parcel, Fairway Glens parcel, is 1.32 acres with the 55 units.
Did you divide that out, or do we have to do that in our head? So it's going to be higher than 30 for sure.
41.6.
Yeah. So it's not much less than this.
Does that 55 include the units across the road and back, or is that just in the main building?
I would have to check. I don't have that.
Because there are the 4 units in back, which would be additional acreage.
Correct.
So
But when they came, they also bought those homes and buffered it with the 4 units so that they weren't backing right up to single-family residential when they did it.
Right, and that's the thing I was saying, that's what I was referring to as well, that obviously it's multifamily housing right behind it, or right, and not a neighborhood, like on Gordon, single family.
The acreage 1.32 definitely does not include the additional units.
No, but
across the
does
street,
the unit count?
I'm not sure about the count.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm certainly happy to open the conversation around density. Like everybody else, Nate, I really, so admire, said it the first time you were here, so admire all the efforts around sustainability. And I think that there's a lot of positive things of what you're trying to do here, but I find the density to be a lot, and I also don't feel like this particular architectural design fits this particular spot. I mean, like Patrick and Chris said, I think it's, when you look at the context references, all the references that are here in Monona are obviously commercial buildings. They're not residential buildings. And the ones that are residential that you've pulled from other parts of the state, it's buildings like the John Deere or whatever that used to be industrial that might be, that have, or folks that have been converted. So it just doesn't feel, both in terms of density and the style of architecture, it just doesn't feel like it is a good fit for the site. And I agree with, virtually everything else that everybody else. So I'll throw the question out that Chris just did to the commission. In terms of density, it sounds like we're almost everybody here has mentioned the density issue. So, I think that's really where the rubber's hitting the road, first and foremost, or for starters, is, what would do we have a specific alternative density, if you will, or for Nate to consider, or? Yeah, Rob?
Can we pose it to Nate and say, is there flexibility to reduce the density of this project? We could talk about the architecture all day long and all the things we like, but it doesn't really matter if it doesn't work for the developer. I like the architecture. Someone else doesn't. Comes down to what Chris was saying. Does it fit?
Right.
Can it be changed to fit?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you want to respond to that now, Nate.
Yeah, we're going to have to seriously look. If we're talking about, subtracting 7 or 10 units, that's one thing. If we're talking about subtracting 30 units, there's no way the project would work. So I think we kind of have to understand from the commission, are we talking a major amount of units, more than 10? And if so, my question would be why? Because it sounds to me like it's not the density per se, it's more the massing itself. From some commissioners, it sounds like it's too monolithic. And I don't know if we can necessarily change that with the current design. We would probably have to go through a full redesign, relook at our massing, and have to contemplate how to make it less monolithic. That's why we added the setback. That's why we've added some of these muse gestures to make it more neighborhood feel, even though I think some of the commissioners voiced that it doesn't feel like that. I think it does. And so I guess two questions here. One is, how many units are we talking about? The second is the massing that currently sits not acceptable to the commission?
Okay.
I'll start. The massing as it currently exists is not acceptable to me. As far as the magic number, we don't try to design something sitting here at the table. We react to what's submitted to us. I don't know any way to give a magic number or something and say this many units would be acceptable. I cherish every square foot of commercial property we have in the city. All the commissioners know that. I very reluctantly lose commercial property, and I think it is the lifeblood of our city, and it creates who we are. So I want to see commercial. I can't say off the top of my head how many units that is, but it's a big building to put on that corner right next to single family. So if the flat out is the existing massing and footprint too big, yes.
So if we reduce the massing, then it may be acceptable, but if we merely reduce our unit count to, like, let's say 85 and leave the massing similar to how it stands today, that would not be acceptable. Is that my understanding?
I would go as far as to say that I wouldn't support that. Yeah.
Right.
I don't know if you could hear that. Another commissioner said they would not support that. It starts with the question, and that changes your whole design, but your setback from Monona Drive and from Dean and from Springhaven, I think you're too close. So that changes your massing right there. I mean, you only have so much room to work with. I think if you tell me I'm going to just chop, get more of a setback from the residential, so chop a couple of units off the two ends that face that, that helps. For me, that's not enough. I really think I got to quit speaking and listen to everybody else on the commission.
I would. Can I?
Yeah.
I mean, I would say that, I don't know, the setback is an issue. I don't know, maybe there's an extra floor on there that doesn't need to be on there for the scale of that neighborhood. I don't know. I just can't figure out how to make that building fit.
Right.
Right? And it's not my job to make it fit. It's just,
right.
It's just, it doesn't feel right.
Right.
You know?
Right, and of course, Nate, I would just say from my, I think I can probably speak for others here too, but it's not a matter of giving you a count, right? Because you could take off 2 3-bedroom units or 10 studio and 1 bed. I mean, that's not our place to say, how many, to come up with a magic number in terms of number of units, because every single one of your units is going to be different. I think what we're saying overall is just that the density is too much, and that there's not much articulation there. And while we appreciate the architecture, it's not the right architecture for that corner. So,
Well,
yeah,
It's not, everybody doesn't share that opinion. I like the architecture personally.
For that
So
corner?
that's no.
Yeah, I think that's what Rob said. He likes it for that corner, right? Rob, is that? I mean, you think it's okay?
If we're talking about the architecture and kind of the design language of the project, I like it. I think it can work.
Okay.
If we're talking about the massing and the scale of the buildings, that's different.
Okay.
I think it's too big for the site. When Chris pointed out a couple of case examples of the setback, that's a little jarring too. So I think for me, the setback has to be looked at, and the overall massing has to be looked at.
Right.
And now you're ultimately going to lose units. I don't know how many, and I'm not going to guess how many there's going to be. But those are some of the things that I would want to see in this project. Less massing, more setback. I like the architecture. Muse is great. I'll shut up.
So that's basically what I was going to say. I think if you started with looking at the setbacks and then, okay, here's the space we really have to work with. I mean, when I was looking at it, that's why I asked if you lopped off some of those back units, could you push it back from Monona Drive? But you've got setback issues all around it, I think. And I do think the overall green space is important. You know, I don't think making up over 9% with the green roof is okay. So I don't know if that gives you something to work with, if you just start with more appropriate setbacks, which creates less massing. I mean, you could use a similar design. I don't have such a big problem with the architectural design either. I might like to see more. The townhome entrances were not at all clear to me either. I guess I'd like to see that fleshed out. It's just hard to look at these black and white prints too. But so it is hard to come up with a specific number of units. It would clearly be less, and I don't know what that does to your financial picture, but I think that's the only way to make it work.
Okay. Brian?
Yeah. Nate, I think you make a good point regarding is the issue more with massing or is it with density? And I think it's both, but I think you're right that some of my initial reaction of the building on the setback as well as the length of the building in one straight shot has more to do with the massing issue rather than the density issue. When it comes to the setbacks, the green space, and parking, to me, those are all indicators that we have a density issue. The visual and where it's placed on the corner and how it relates to the neighborhood, to me, relates to the massing issue. So I think we have both. But I appreciate that question back at us because I think it is key. Is it because it's the style of the architecture and the massing? Is that what we're responding to from a density standpoint? And I just wanted to clarify that I think it's both.
Yeah, and it's just as a follow-up to that, Nate, too, in case this is something that we always have to go back to. I'm going to go back to the parking. Our favorite topic here at the Planning Commission. You know, it's safe to say we all appreciate notions of shared car and shared scooter and all of that, and yet we would tell you that we've been burned more than once by thinking that's we're so far along in that thinking and doing that we don't need parking spaces in various developments, and we don't want to get burned again. It's not fair to the community. It's not fair to the people that live in that development. And so, again, I'm going to go back to what Brian said, which is the fact that you don't have enough parking spaces is, I think, another reflection. Can't figure out how to fit them in is probably another reflection of the fact that it's just too big of a building for that site overall. Because we can't, and we're not going to, I mean, I would just say as a commission, I know this commission well enough to know that we're not going to just ignore the fact that you're short by however many spaces. Because we just don't, we can't afford to do that. As I said, we've situations before, we'd love it if everybody walked and less people used cars and less people had 2 cars and all of that. But the reality is we're not there yet. And so I think that's another indication, as Brian said, that it's just too big and that it's probably both issues. Christy, do you have anything?
So then what we're hearing from the commission tonight is that the massing is too large and it should potentially be reduced by a whole story. The parking right now needs to be within code, which I think that is probably doable. And then the third item that I think I'd like a little bit more feedback on from the commission is a couple of members have said they'd like a change in design. Is that reference to the actual massing itself, like the shape of the building, or is that reference to how we're cladding the building and the vernacular?
Well, I mean, Rob's already said that he likes the building, so we know where Rob sits. Chris?
I'm with Rob and Sue. I like the architecture. For me, it's the mass of it and more articulation. I mean, it's just a straight flat wall. I'm going to drive for 300 feet. It needs some movement, but I like your architecture.
If I could just point out too that there's talk about how it doesn't fit into the neighborhood or the architecture of Monona Drive, which we've all talked about. And it's an eclectic design. There's no carried through design language that's super strong. And there's the high school right across the building that has a full, giant facade of brick. And if you go down the BMO Harris building, it's all brick. And the school building on the corner of Nichols and Monona Drive is all brick. So I'm just justifying why I think that it works, because I think it's going to age well. It's not cement board. It's not vinyl siding. I think the design has integrity in it, and I really like it. So kudos, Doug and Juan.
I think I'm with Chris here. I actually like brick. I mean, I have no objection to the brick at all. I think the brick looks really nice. I understand connecting to other pieces of brick along Monona Drive. It's more about the movement. It's more about the articulation, that it's just a big flat surface with that to me feels a little bit too monolithic or industrial for that particular spot. But
I like the architecture too. I just think it's too big.
Yeah. Brian, do you have any?
I'll only add, because you mentioned lopping off a story. Actually, the height of the building actually is not the biggest concern I have. I know that sounds like it's counterintuitive to the massing aspect, but with movement and other aspects regarding it, and maybe it's not one big L and a bar, maybe it's a different orientation that doesn't give that same impression of one long building. Because when you take the height of this building and you compare it to some other buildings in the nearby area, it's actually fairly comparable. It's not too far off. So.
Can I just say, I would agree with that when you said lapping it off. My concern was always getting more surface area for green space and maybe parking, but I don't think it's necessary to lop off a floor.
Yeah, I mean, I think about other red brick buildings like Kennedy Place, for instance, that's right on, right around the corner or whatever. I mean, again, I don't think it's the materials or even, it's just that there's not a whole lot of movement. But and again, Kennedy Place doesn't seem like it's overwhelming, in terms of where we're, because it's not, of course, it's probably not 300 feet long. But anyway, any other, does that give you better direction, Nate?
Yeah, I think that does actually. I think I have some ideas while everyone's been talking about how we can articulate our facade. And I would agree that it is a long facade, so I think there does need to be further refinement there. I think that we'll have to look at the setback. It sounds like 14 feet is probably more adequate. And then figuring out how we can get our parking within the requirements. If we do those three things, and come back to the commission, is that a project, obviously without you guys seeing it, but are those the initiatives that you guys kind of focus on for this next round, which would likely be a more formal approval track?
Exit, circulation too, just discussion about that.
And I think one other thing is, we heard from people who are concerned about housing displacement and small business displacement. So maybe, I don't know if this is a possibility, not acquiring the 4 full properties and only taking 3 and leaving 1 that does include the housing and the small businesses. Maybe that's how you can make it work.
And we are going to look at that small business incubator. I think that's a great idea. And I was texting the guys that said a skate park would be awesome. So we're going to look at designing a skate park too.
And you know, there's just a lot of high school kids that hang out in that area, you know, lunch and lunchtime and after school. So yeah, if you did something for kids, you know, I think that could be beneficial.
Awesome.
Okay. Anything else, Commission, from our end? Anything else, Nate, from your end?
I don't think so. We'll coordinate a little bit more with Doug here with the parking requirements and such. And then we will go back to our drawing board and start drawing. So I think this was great feedback and we appreciate it. And thank you for allowing us.
Okay, thank you. With that, we're going to move to new business. Number 6.
Put a few on it.
Pre-hearing conference on the request by One City Schools for consideration of a new comprehensive signage plan at 1707 West Broadway. Case number S-022-2021. Welcome back, One City.
Hello. Nice to be here.
Thanks
still.
for your patience.
No worries.
Yeah, I thought you were just enjoying the meeting there.
We were getting some craft projects done.
Well,
so
you're
also
up.
with us for this agenda item is Amy Duval with Zebra Dog. They've been working with us on our exterior and some of our interior designs, and so she'll be here to also answer any questions about the sign plan that we would like to discuss with you tonight and get some feedback on.
Great.
All right, David, I will share my screen. I will hit the share button.
So it's just kind of a preface to the whole conversation. One of the unique things about this particular site is that it was once a part of a larger campus, and so our particular building, as we can all see from the map here, is really kind of tucked away. So there's a lot of great frontage down the Beltline for the parking structure, but our school building right here is very kind of tucked away. So one of the biggest challenges that we're having is finding an adequate way to signal where you are, that you've made it to One City Schools, while also, you know, working within the confines of our property, which has us a bit tucked in there on the campus. So you can see here from this map here some of the proposed spots for our signage, starting with this the red dot here. When you come in off Bridge Road, which is the main entrance into our campus, is where we would, you know, where we're considering putting a monument sign to signal that you've entered into our campus. One of the challenges with that particular spot, as noted in the report, is that there's a light pole right there, a city light pole. So we'd have to make sure that the actual location there worked, you know, vis-a-vis the light pole. But this is an area right when you come in off Bridge Road. It's good to signal that here you are, you've made it to One City. And then along, you see the smaller yellow dots along the way. These are kind of the breadcrumbs that you follow, so to speak, to get into One City. We're looking at banner branding here along light poles, just signaling that you've made it to One City campus and also guiding you through. They serve as a natural kind of wayfinder. Once you get to the entrance to our campus there, along the former Ring Road, just to the south, those 3 dots there, those are the directional signs to help you find either your parking or your entrance to the pickup and drop off surface lot. And then specifically on the building are those blue dots, signaling what the building is for, branding One City Schools, and also our address at 1707 West Broadway, which as you all can imagine, it's important to have our address loud and proud on the building because we still get a lot of mail for WPS and vice versa. So it'll be a process probably to train everybody that comes through. Here is the look in as you're turning onto Bridge Road, onto our campus. This is the proposed monument sign. And you can see right behind it is where the light pole is. And to the left there is it's Kindercare or La Petite Academy daycare, and to the right is Monona Gardens. When you turn to the left, it's a dead end. So this one city sign here is really kind of bringing you into the campus as you make your right turn into the greater campus.
Did I move too fast?
No, it's all
Okay.
good.
Yeah.
This is just the details of the sign size, what you're seeing here on the schematic. These would be the wayfinding signs these are the green dots on that initial map. These are the ways that you would find your way to the main entrance, to the pickup drop-off, and then to parking. WPS had similar signs there on the campus leading people towards either the entrance to the building or to a parking ramp. These are similar in function and purpose. These are some examples of the banner signs along the light pole that would be used to alert people that they've made it to the right place, and also de facto wayfinders. You can see how they'd lead you into the surface lot, pick up and drop off. And then right there on the facade of the building, our address, which is important. And then, One City Schools. This facade of the building is also the first kind of really visible spot as you come around the bend after coming in on Bridge Road. So this sign right here would be another key piece of information for people coming to visit the campus, that they've found the right building. That this side of the building here is quickly visible as you come around the bend. That's just the side of the building showing you where those signs would be.
Yep.
We imagine that some of the questions tonight are going to be around the size and how we're calculating the size, or how the size gets calculated. So we're curious to get feedback on just how we should be considering the size of these signs. Is it drawing a rectangle around the whole logo and then the lettering, or are they separate pieces or anything like that? So we're looking forward to hearing feedback on just how these can fit into the project. And then here's an example of our idea for the very front of the building. As you know, we received a very generous donation to purchase the property, and so we'd like to highlight our donor on the campus, name the campus after her. So that's at the top of the building, the Pleasant T. Rowland Leadership Campus. And then just beneath, right over the front doors, again, kind of the entrance into the learning environment right there.
I'm going to skip this. There we go. So again, we measured the different parts of the logo.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And then, one of the highlights to the building is the frontage on the Bell Line. 120,000 cars every day go past it, so it's a great opportunity to let people know who you are. And we have some ideas for using this parking structure to signal that this is our school location, specifically on that stair column that you see in the second image there. So we have some concepts there that we'd like feedback on. One being our logo, kind of on the corner there. So as you're going down the Beltline from either direction, you can see that it's something going on there rather than just a big parking deck. It would give us kind of bi-directional coverage there. Here was what it would look like just on one face. And then one of the other concepts that we're looking at is rather than having our logo either on the corner there or maybe even on both faces, would be more of a mural design. Something that fits in with our, fits in with the general design of our campus, also kind of signals that it's a place for young people for learning.
That was the last page, Dave.
That's it, yeah. So we'd be really grateful to hear any feedback that you all have for our ideas. Amy is here to answer any questions, take down any information that you might have as we go back to the drawing board for
Great.
some of these
Great.
initial concepts.
Thanks, David.
Thank you. So I did meet with the applicant to kind of discuss this before they submitted, and was really working with them to, as they said, help identify the campus and differentiate it there from WPS as well. So the package here, the monument sign, the wall signs, address sign, on-site directional light pole banners, and the parking structure signage. I think there's discussion elements for each of those, outlined in the staff report. The size and the location of the monument sign, both with regards to its height off the ground, square footage. The wall signage, as it relates to the scale of the building, but also which elements of wall signage versus identification for the address, for example, especially the naming of the building as well. The scale of the address sign, as it relates to the size of the building, difficulty locating, that it's not specifically on West Broadway. One thing that was really a discussion point was the on-site directional signage, the light pole banners. As it relates to the size of these, the number, their categorization as well within the city's sign ordinance. Staff's opinion is that the wayfinding that they offer and the fact that they really identify this portion of the campus is beneficial. The size may be a little bit, possibly something that could be reduced, as well as the count and sort of how that relates to the existing light poles. The on-site directional signage, as well, the size of those looks to be a little larger than maybe the code would allow, but again, maybe some discussion on that. As well as finally the parking structure, the scale of some of the signage there, the preference potentially between the branding for the school as well, as the mural. So that would be it from me. Thanks.
Before I open it up, I have a question for you, or either you or one of the things that Doug has referenced is the fact that certainly in terms of the monument sign and some other signs that the sort of scale of the building and the campus may warrant something larger. Are the signs at WPS larger than what was traditionally our code?
No, they did minimal signage there.
Even the main entrance,
if
even
you
the
look at
main
it,
monument
it's-
sign right in the front?
The monument sign is much larger.
Oh, the monument, yes, but not I thought you were talking about building signage.
Okay, but the
In the
building
directional
signage, of course,
wayfinding,
is a
I didn't measure
private,
it,
so
but
the
it's
building
still much
signage is,
larger.
because it's a private entity, okay, but the monument sign is much larger.
Yeah, well, the one on the Beltline's 10 foot tall.
The
know
monument
what
sign
that
is large, the address sign that they had, because they had, 1707 and they had Norby building is almost exactly the same size as what we are proposing.
Right.
So yes, and their directional, their on-site directional signage is larger than 4 square feet. I can guarantee that.
Okay.
I don't have the exact dimensions, but it is definitely much larger than 4 square feet, which is the size of the temporary yard sign, type signs that they have right now. So.
Great. Just was trying to put it in context, Tammy,
Yeah.
and I appreciate it.
Yep.
Since that was raised. So with that, I will open it up to the commission. Chris, do you want to start this one?
Sure. I see no reason for the monument sign to be any bigger than our code. It's a very visible area. If you don't hit your brakes, you're going to run into it. The other monument signs there, the 2 are on the Beltline, and then the one at their entrance off of Broadway, they agreed that was their only sign for the campus, and they had the building with like extra lots to have more additional signs along Broadway, and said, we'll forego that if we can have a little more size on our main entry to make it prominent. But where this is at, there's no way somebody can miss this sign when they're coming down there. Once you're down there, you see it. So I don't see any reason for that to be bigger. The wayfaring signage, again, doesn't have to be 5 foot tall. And you know, if it was 4 foot tall and the logo stuck 4 inches up, no problem. But it doesn't need to be 5 foot tall to have wayfaring signage, I don't think. The building, I think all the signage is in proportion with the building. I have no issues with that, and I think if anybody else wants to give them $10 million, they should get their name on the building too. I think that's appropriate, and I think it's tasteful the way you've done it. I think it's very appropriate. The banners, I think they make it festive. I tell you, it's not really addressed in our sign code very well, and I know, Doug, you said, well, to make it fit, it should really be a flexible material, but I think if they want to do aluminum, it's much more permanent. And it's still a banner sign, but I'd go with what they propose with aluminum. I think it makes it just a festive, more fun place. The slippery slope is what you put on them. They can't be for advertising. You can't have, sign up now for fall courses. You can't say, call us at 608 One City. I mean, they need to be just festive. Certainly, I don't know that we can say it's wayfaring signage, but if it says the One City or the Pleasant Tea Rowland campus or whatever that verbiage was, I think that's just fine. I think it adds to it. I think it adds to the whole feel of that campus. So I'd be totally in favor of that. The parking structure, I think that's a great place to put your logo. I think it gives you identification from the Beltline. We're struggling with all these monument signs we have all over. So, well, we want another monument sign. I like your solution by putting your monument sign where nobody else's is, and then let's just find some way to identify it from the Beltline. Personally, I strongly prefer the logo to just the mural. I think it gives you identity. It shows you from there. I think we could find a reason to approve that. And I never thought about putting on the corner half and half. I'm sure that would look really neat if you're eastbound, but if you're westbound, it's going to look really odd. So I think to have the full badge, the full logo on the south face would make a lot more sense for you, because it'll make sense no matter which way you're driving, and you'd see it. And I think it actually looks good, and it breaks up that blue a little bit. And I think we could have certainly a way where we can consider this another, almost like a building. It's a structure, but it's a major, major structure, and it's no different than having another building on the Beltline. So for me, I think it'd be wholly appropriate. And I like the solution you came up with. Stuff we talked about before, wasn't great, but this, having that badge there, I think is great. And I think I've addressed all your signs. Have I not?
I think you have.
Yeah. Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Brian?
Yeah, now I gotta find my notes. Hang on. All right. I'll start with the monument sign as well. I think, yeah, it's easily in a spot that we don't need to make an exception. I think the size can be reduced, maybe shifted over to the right so it's not in the light pole issue, but you guys will figure that piece of it out.
Can I break in? Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
I had one more comment on that. I don't know if you like it or not, but you might want to have a right arrow on there, or just something that's saying, we're not straight ahead, we're over there. Just comment.
Yep, perfect.
Can it be animated neon?
No. And it can't be changeable, and it cannot be changeable message.
The flags, the cookie crumbs that you would follow, that we have cookies here. I think it's a great idea. I agree that the fabric, or the perforated aluminum, I think is an upgrade compared to the fabric. I much prefer that idea. The signs on the building. So I just did some quick math, because I think it's important for us to recognize, like, if you're drawing a rectangle around these signs, they appear to be very large, but I took just the sign on the in the front of the doors where you would enter the building, and if you break that up, because it's not a sign that's on a backer where we would truly draw and say the background is part of the sign. And if you take the two smaller rectangles, you're less than half the size of the larger rectangle. You're at 35 square feet compared to 72.
Correct.
So, like, the number of square footage for the signage, I think is just, if we take it with a grain of salt and cut it almost in half, that's actually what signage we're really looking at here. I think the address sign is proportional to the building. It matches what we have on some of the other buildings for the WPS campus. So I think the signage on the building is just fine. The directional signs, I think they're slightly larger than needed, but I do think they're needed for those spaces because you'll have a lot of lost people if you don't have them. So I agree with the issue around the directional signs.
Parking garage.
Parking garage, yes. I agree with what Chris said. Makes it simple. The one on the south side is ideal. I would not do the corner, and I would not do the mural. I don't think it tells people who you are. A piece that I saw in your previous proposal had to do with the traffic flow pattern, and there's a lot of mention of signs being removed and being replaced with other signs, but I don't see them part of the sign package. And so, for example, there's some stop signs that are being removed and being replaced with stop for pedestrians and crosswalk, no right turn, no left turn. Like, are those signs?
Yeah, we had those as part of the civil package, not the overhaul branding signage package. So that's, I suppose we could add that in. It was just something that, was part of the civil redesign of the traffic flow.
Okay, but there were no samples of the signs in that previous package? There was just the notations?
There were locations, and with the verbiage, but they would match, what is there, like your standard traffic sign, metal on the post. I probably have some pictures somewhere, but I mean, we could.
So Tammy, are you saying that, it would be like standard, like DOT type signs if it's a stop,
Yes.
or if it's one way, or if it's...
Thank you.
It would be standard DOT signage.
It's almost my bedtime too.
No, and I understand that we're removing some stop signs, and then we have some additional language, which I don't believe are a one-size-fits-all standard DOT sign. So stop for pedestrians and crosswalks, there are a variety of different ways that can be done. It can be done on a sandwich board. It can be done on flags in the ground. It can be done in lots of different ways.
Okay.
No, the intent is for that to be, a DOT type, road sign. So we can. Ayers is no longer on the call, but we can work with them to provide you with some examples of those.
Well, that can just be added into that final submittal.
For this comprehensive signage plan, or for the traffic?
The previous one, the traffic one.
Yeah.
Can I interject for just 1 second here?
Oh, yeah.
I think, Brian, that would be covered under like site civil design standards, and it's more of a regulatory signs. Like, we don't get like no parking or accessible parking signs as part of our sign packages. That's part of a civil set. So we don't ever get stop sign samples or yield signs or anything like that. All that regulatory stuff is usually handled in the civil submittal, I believe.
Correct, but we have things on here, Rob, like no left turn during drop-off and pickup hours.
Yeah, and to your point, we probably even put the specific time, maybe even want to put the specific times, like no pick, or, no left turn between blah, and blah, and blah, and blah, right? Like you might see on a parking sign, so I hear what you're saying.
It's fine. I just saw these items that some of them are probably not in the standard DOT, and they can just be submitted with the final package of the signage plan, if there's anything outside of what's the standard DOT signs.
Okay, yeah, the timing on that's a little different because the civil is on a different track than our comprehensive signage plan. So we'll try to work through that. And
there are only a few on here that are likely not DOT signs, probably less than 5.
Would you be comfortable with staff review for those? The wayfinding signage?
What was the?
Would you be comfortable with staff review for those wayfinding
yeah,
signage?
absolutely.
Maybe to help them with their timeline?
And those are that's the only item I have in addition.
Okay, thank you.
Patrick?
I don't really have anything to add. I just had a question, and that was the wayfaring signs that were designed at 5 feet. Was there a particular reason for that, or necessity?
I think the goal, yeah, I think that's a great question. I think the goal for the overall directional signage was to kind of hit all of the 3 major categories, so the vehicular traffic, the pedestrian traffic, the bike traffic, and try to keep that high enough so that we're making that accessible and seen no matter where you're coming in, with kids walking and people milling about, especially at the drop-off and pickup times. Cars going past, we wanted it to be visible enough that we weren't going to have any sort of impediment to see that sign.
Gotcha. I guess in my thoughts, I was thinking of so many people driving SUVs and kids walking around and the height. Like, I guess other than what everyone else said, I guess I don't have a problem with the height of those. That's it for me.
Go ahead, Chrissy.
I actually had a similar question on the monument sign. Like, was your intent to get attention from those driving down West Broadway as well with the size on that?
Yeah, I think with the inability to put any signage on West Broadway, and really you have that one moment to see that signage off of Bridge, that we were trying to kind of build up that area slightly, both with landscaping and with the sign. I think the other piece is just understanding that the base of the sign is included in the overall height, even though it could be covered with some sort of landscaping, depending on what was planned for that area. So I think we can definitely reduce the height slightly, but our goal was to capture really the only shot to get onto that road on Bridge Street.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely understand that desire because it's so close. And there's just still a lot of people that don't know who you are or where you are or how to get there. So I feel like all of your signage it's all really tasteful. I really like the perforated aluminum. I prefer that versus the fabric because that's just going to hold up so much better. I think a lot of it is really, I like it all. I would say with the parking ramp, I do agree that the logo should be on option 2. And, I kind of wish it was logo and mural, but I'll try to settle with just the logo.
I was thinking that too, actually.
I know. I mean, if you wanted to explore it,
and the logo. All right.
You could. Did you explore that, the mural with the logo on top, or a different type of mural? Was it too much?
We didn't, but I'm sure there are probably some other opportunities to work with some murals on that site.
Okay, excellent.
I don't have anything to add really because I thought it was a great package. I do think the monument sign is just as visible at the 5-foot height, actually. I think it shows up fine there, and Chris's idea of an arrow I think is a good one. And I also like the suggestion of the parking garage. I would not put the logo on a mural because I think it looks really clean on the blue background. That's great. Put a mural somewhere else. And I love the fact that everybody loves the banners because I thought they were great because I had the same feeling. It just makes it look, like kids in a school and activity. So I really like it. So yeah, I think you've been very creative and it's all very appropriate.
Wonderful.
Great.
Rob?
Yeah, it's a wonderful package. You laid it out so it's really easy to read. I can straight, I'll flip through quickly. The monument sign, I would agree with comments that it doesn't need to be that big. People will see it coming in. Perfect spot.
Rob, we can't hear you very well.
Oh, sorry. I like the monument sign, but I would agree that it can be reduced to meet requirements. The wayfinding, the internal wayfinding signage, I like the design, I like the way it looks. I don't know if it needs to be 5'10". I think that could be reduced in height. Maybe I missed it, but with the banners, is it planned to add light poles? I'm not sure it's that.
So we didn't even talk about that. So you didn't miss anything, Rob. The idea was, yes, to add additional poles, not necessarily with lights, in the interim locations, especially on that little piece of Broadway and Angle Drive, because I think that's really key for redirecting, because there's no signage on the building on that quote-unquote backside, even though it's a very public face of the building. I think the playground will eventually be a good cue that you're close, but you don't want to kidding. But yeah, the comment about reducing the number of signs, the number of poles, the three of us had conversation earlier today about that as well. So, and certainly reducing the size a little bit, just so that what were we, 2 square feet over the maximum. So yeah, but I think we would need more than 3 though to do what we want to do.
Okay. Okay, so those would be on dedicated poles that are not existing right now. Okay, so those will get wind loaded?
Yeah, if there's an existing pole that's, on that path, then we would utilize it if there's too large of a distance. So
okay, if there is a pole, then that would have to be, you'd have to make sure that the existing pole will be able to handle the wind load of a perf panel added to it. Because when they spec out light poles and banners and stuff, all that's calculated to calculate wind load. So
okay,
it's a substantial addition to an existing pole.
Okay.
But I like them. I think all the building signs look really nice. Address, everything looks good. And I agree with the badging on the south facing of the parking structure. That's it. Really nice package.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Chris?
Just one comment. You know me and precedents, I'm always worried about them.
Yeah.
And so when we're talking, I get what Brian said about deciding the size of these signs, but I hesitate to start breaking it down too much because we have applicants come in all the time and say, well, I'll take this piece here and this piece here and this piece here, and now I didn't exceed it. I think certainly an easier exception would be to look at the size and the mass of that building and say, hey, we've got such a big building, a 3-story building with all this size, they can have a little more than 250 square feet if it's done right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of why I was going that direction. I worry about future applicants breaking their sign down and saying we meet it now.
Mm-hmm.
So when you do your review, you do what you believe is appropriate, but I'm just giving you some background as to where I was coming from.
Okay. Anything else? Do you all feel like that you got the feedback you needed from us tonight?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Great. I'm kind of wanting to know where the zebra dog came from, but that'll have to be a discussion for another time.
It's a great story. I'll share it someday.
All right. Well, thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thanks, Bob.
Good night.
Good night. So that takes us to 6B. Public hearing on the request by KinderCare, represented by Signage Builders, for approval of a fence permit, 6109 Monona Drive. You guys, thanks so much for hanging out. I hope you found something to book on tape or something to listen to while you're waiting all evening for us. So Monday Night Football, I don't know, but welcome. Welcome to your public hearing. It's up. You can go ahead and start. It's up for you to start during a public hearing.
Thank you. And our project's quite small, so we'll get through it pretty quick, hopefully, for you. I'm Joe with Xanadu Builders, and good evening, Plan Commission. We're a small general contractor that actually works as a consultant for KinderCare on a national level. But that said, want to let you know that I am a Wisconsin resident, so I'm home to the area, and I drive through Monona every football Saturday to watch the Badgers play with and see my daughter. So, and I see that Dan Grable, who is also with KinderCare, he's a maintenance supervisor, just joined us. Did you have a good nap there, Dan? So Dan is the maintenance super for KinderCare in the Midwest. He oversees about 300 buildings. And tonight we're just here to discuss a rear privacy wall at the KinderCare on Monona Drive. The wall is 14 feet tall, and it's starting to lean and become unsafe. And so we questioned the height and would like to propose a shorter fence, which is more common with all daycares that we work with across the country. So I don't know if you have the presentation there or if I should share the screen.
Share your screen if you want. Otherwise, I have the presentation pulled up as well.
Yeah, let's see here. So, can you see that?
Not yet.
Okay. Let me see.
There we go.
Okay.
Yep, there we go.
Okay, so let's go here. Okay, so the existing building is it's an EFIS building. It's gray with a kind of a medium blue color. It's at 6109 Monona, about a mile down from the other presentation earlier. And in the back, this is just a Google Earth. There's like a 150-foot wall that separates the KinderCare from the residential side. And that's where the children play. So this is a picture of the actual wall. So the wall is actually made up of like CMU, just a smooth face CMU. And I think originally they wanted to try to match the building, so they put up these EFIS panels. And over time, Mother Nature has just taken its toll. There's these C-channel steel columns that run up every 8 feet that support the wall, but the wall's leaning now, and the actual CMU itself is cracking due to water getting in it, freeze in winter. So our proposal is to shorten that wall. Here's the other side of the wall from the neighboring side. Our proposal is to get rid of this top EFIS, remove these steel C-channels, do a split-face CMU wall with a precast cap, something a little more friendly. And then let's see if this other one will share. Is it showing the spec sheet now?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. So we're leaning in one of these grays over here. I think there's one circled on your plan. Is it 4302?
4303.
4303. Okay. Yep. So that was picked because that matches the building itself. So that's basically it. We're trying to take a 14-foot wall that's become unsafe and build a new wall that's 8 feet and put a cap on the top. So with that, we invite questions.
Okay, great. Thank you. John?
Can we the consideration?
Sorry. I will close the public hearing, assuming that there's anything else that you'd like to add and open a consideration of action on the request by KinderCare represented by Xanadu Builders for approval of fence permit at 6109 Monona Drive.
Thank you. So the reason, as way of background, that I brought this through, to the Plan Commission, typical ordinance for the rear fencing in the rear yard would be 6 feet in height. But also with this, given the use and the proximity to a residential neighborhood in the back, in pulling the property file back in the early 90s, this was originally approved with an 8-foot fence, as is proposed, very similar. And then later it came back pretty quickly, I believe within a year, because of noise complaints from the adjacent neighbors. And so it's my understanding that the additional panels, the 6 feet additional, were placed as a result of the to have noise abatement and to address some of the noise concerns. So that was really the reason that I wanted to bring it back. We wouldn't typically do this, but did do a courtesy notice to the adjacent property owners just to let them know that this proposal was coming through. I didn't hear anything, and I'm not sure that we have anybody on the call. But my recommendation is approval of the fence permit with the finding of fact and condition of approval as listed in the staff report. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Susan, would you like to start?
Yeah, I remember when this went up and the additional sound protection was regarded as needed by the neighbors, but if you didn't hear anything back from them, I guess I'm comfortable with it. I went and looked at it today. It looks like it does look like it needs to be replaced, and I think the 8-foot height seems appropriate. And I think with the condition of approval that if it does result in noise issues, that you would come back makes sense to me. So I'm comfortable with it as proposed.
Is the cap, just to Susan's point, is the cap something that is relatively easy to remove if for some reason it ended up having to come back?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think if you're saying if we end up having to then raise the fence again to a different height for noise?
Yeah.
Okay. So part of the failure of this wall was due to the fact that it did not have a cap. So the masons who did it, they filled the CMU with concrete, but it just didn't take the way it should have. So what happens is the water weeps down the CMU or the ethos, and it kind of lays on the top of the CMU. And when it's warm, it drips inside, and when it's cold, it starts popping the brick. So I think what could be maybe considered is to make sure that if we were able to add, to build this with a cap, but knowing that if we had to do a sound wall, we'd have to find a way to do it without removing that cap. Does that make sense to you?
Sure. Thank you. Christy?
Yeah, seeing that no neighbors came out to speak their piece, I think this makes sense. I hope you can figure out a way to add height, though, if that's needed. But yeah, looks good to me.
I really have a problem with the parking and some of the landscape. No, just kidding. Just kidding. It's a long day. Sorry, it's a long night, long day. No, it's fine. It's absolutely fine. Thank you very much.
Brian?
Yeah, I agree. No concerns. I hope you don't need the added height. I just don't think that's nearly as appealing, and it just adds more problems. So hopefully it'll be taken care of.
Okay.
I think it looks good. It's a more attractive wall than what's there right now. And I just want to confirm, you've already said it, but you're aware of the one condition would be if we have some issues with neighbors, we might have to come back and talk about it a little more, because I don't think you'll hear anything until summertime when they're out there playing and loud. And it was a big enough commotion, but that was 30 years ago, so maybe those people don't live there anymore.
Yeah. In fact, maybe Dan could shed some light on that. Dan, you have multiple properties that border residential they typically have 6-foot fences, right?
Yeah.
Do you get a lot of noise complaints, or how do you address that?
So, first of all, the kids are out there year-round making all kinds of noise, guys. Kindergarten kids go out year-round. There are those specific cold days or very heavy snow or rain where they might not go out. But yeah, it's year-round at the same level of noise. And in most cases, our properties are really just 6-foot-high wood slat fences. And I could say with my 185 centers and 12 years of managing, facilities for kinder care, we've had a couple of visual type complaints where it's actually reverse, where we have to add slats or create more privacy because something's going on the other side that we don't want the children to see. I haven't had any noise complaints. Doesn't mean that right after saying that we're not going to get one tomorrow, but it's not a real big issue. I think this wall will do fine being 8 foot tall.
Just so we know, their equipment is well above the top of the wall, and the properties behind it are much, much higher, and I think that's where it comes from, the angle of the properties coming down in here.
That's right.
I'm fine with what you're proposing. We might have to talk about it if it becomes a really hot button. I notice they have their play structure right up by your wall too, so.
Yeah.
The one house, yeah, it's right there, their own little play structure.
Right, right, okay, right. Rob?
I don't have any issues with it. I happen to know the neighbor behind there. And she's got 2 small kids, so maybe there's reciprocal noise trespass, or maybe a lower wall will allow them to throw their kids over the wall if they don't want to watch them.
Aren't these kids there like during the daytime? Right?
Yeah.
That's daytime. I mean, heaven forbid kids make noise. Right?
Yeah, I have no issue. I think it's fine. I think I would just consider the treatment at the top of that wall. So, heaven forbid, should you have to add something, it's not disastrous to that wall. So, but fine.
Yeah, I would say that the current wall has served its 30 years well. But it definitely, is hurting. So, I think this would be a nice upgrade and that the neighbors would probably appreciate as well. So, with that, do I have a motion?
Move approval with finding the fact as written by staff, reword the condition of approval, Doug, a little bit. If the new fence results in noise issues, Plan Commission may require applicant to return for further adjustments and noise abatement.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion?
We're good? You understand the condition?
Yes.
Okay.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks again for your patience.
Yes.
Sure. Go Badgers. Game this weekend.
Okay, with that, we'll turn to staff report regarding status of development projects.
Thank you. So just a couple things I wanted to share updates on. As already mentioned, the Dane County Erosion Control Stormwater Management Ordinance was passed, I believe, last week. It was signed, and so one of my colleagues at the city is already working on that, along with Darren from Via Becker. So I expect that that's going to be moving through pretty quickly for the ordinance revision. But just I know it's been brought up at different times, so I wanted to update you on that. The Monona Garden project, I did hear back from the applicant for that, and I'm expecting an update in January, one of the 2 meetings there. And today I did receive an application for the December 13th meeting for the Village Lane site. So it's a mixed-use project with a component of workforce housing, and so that's going to be on the agenda for the December 13th meeting.
Who's bringing that in?
That is Slindy.
Yeah, Bert.
Makes some sense.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. Any updates on the discussion of diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Did you just ask for questions from us? Oh, no, sorry. I apologize.
Do you have any questions?
Yeah, but my mind's working, so I heard the diversity and equity, so we're not quite to that item.
Upcoming meetings, it looks like we have them except for the 27th, we're canceled, right?
Correct.
Thank God. Plan Commission requests for information.
I hate to do this to everybody, but I'm going to take a couple minutes. As part of our Green Tier Charter, one of our projects for the next year or two is to really come up with some standards for green roofs, okay? Because there are none. I mean, we all know green roofs, they do great for attenuating water and slowing it down, but there's also issues how many more pollutants come off the green roofs, how much more phosphorus, how much TSS, because clearly more comes off a green roof than a regular roof. So the City of Madison and Dane County are both really struggling with how to put these standards together. So we made a subcommittee. It's Dane County, City of Madison, our CARPC, and then me. So we're going to be doing some touring. The first thing we're going to do is we have a tour of university facilities. They have 4 green roofs they're going to tour and let us look at and what's the maintenance like and everything. But I could use input. And I know our chair has a lot of experience in the Chicago area with it, and we really need to know what we're dealing with and how we wrap our arms around it, because everybody wants to encourage them, but we need to know what we're doing with water quality.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're adding phosphorus, we need to address that.
Right.
And if there's growing matter up there, we're adding phosphorus.
Right.
Are we adding TSS? Yeah, we absolutely are, because right now it's just the dust that hits the roof, and there's going to be particulates, whatever comes off of that. So it's going to be over the next year or two, and once it's done, it'll be just like this county ordinance now, and it'll become a new county ordinance that we'll be subject to. So any input anybody has, any experience anybody has, this is something that just, we don't have a lot of info on.
Sure.
And the people that are proponents really talk about, oh, this is great and it cleans the water. Well, does it? We have to figure that out. We have to look for studies, any anecdotal information.
Yeah, I was
we
going
might
to say,
have.
I can definitely dig out some stuff from Chicago, and
Appreciate
I
that.
know that, I know certainly that, I think most of the, well, at least half of the green roofs over the campus were designed right here locally with, by Canada.
What we're looking really for is testing data for what the runoff is like.
Yeah.
And how do we do it? So it's going to be what kind of credit can you get? I know we'll get credit for retention and reducing flow. That's no question.
Mm-hmm.
Well, much I don't know, but what do we do about the contaminants that come with it?
Yeah.
Promega in Fitchburg has some green roofs. Promega in Fitchburg has some green roofs.
Yeah, so they might have some info.
Yeah, and
there,
they've
too.
had those for a
But
very long
really,
time.
it'd be nice if we had
2010
somebody
usually.
that studied them and
Right.
actually did some studies as to the.
My company did all the stormwater engineering for TRS in Fitchburg. And
Great. Anything?
Promega too, sorry.
Yeah, anything you could
Promega.
share would be really appreciated.
Yeah, I certainly don't know, but I have a feeling that some of my colleagues would
Awesome.
know.
Terrific. Thank you.
Anything else? Interesting. No other information? I just have one request, and that is that those of you that have families need to take these cookies home, because I'm not going out the door with me, so you should take them home with you. For that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That might be a record, you guys.
Oh, no.
No. We'd have to go faster than that. Yep.
You have to go past me.